bones, cause I don't know my limits. My mind just tells me I'm gonna make it just fine. So show me what you got, show me what you got, show me what you got, show me what you got. Cause I don't know my limits. My mind just tells me I'm gonna make it just fine. So show me what you got, show me what you got, show me what you got, show me what you got. I
After a hectic opener to the 2023 IMSA Esports Global Championship, it's time to rumble our way to upstate New York. Welcome to Countdown to Green for what's bound to be an exciting round 2 of our championship action. My name's Arjuna Kangipati, delighted that you're joining us here on IMSA TV on the iRacing Esports Network, alongside with Lewis McLeod as well as Greg Creamer. And Lewis, what an interesting race that we had 7 days ago to kick things off as we brought the GTPs over to IMSA Esports.
Yeah, I got to say, it was everything. It was exciting, it was thrilling, it was edge of the seat. Action took us all the way to the checkered flag, and I don't think for any bit in that 2 hours and 40 minutes we were left bored. It was fantastic, and I just can't wait to see where the season's going to go.
And Greg, from your perspective, as we take a very quick turnaround for these drivers, they've come from Road Atlanta, they're over to Watkins Glen. I guess in some ways they're similar tracks, but throw the setup book out and start from scratch in many ways.
Absolutely. I mean, this track is so smooth. When you look at Road Atlanta with the constant changes of direction, this one runs a little bit differently. And what it really comes down to is it's so smooth, you want that setup absolutely screwed down as low as you can. But remember, you got to slaughter the curves in the inner loop. Use the curves at 10, you use the curves at 1. You got to compromise.
And so let's talk you through some of what we saw at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta for the opening round of the 2023 IMSA Esports Global Championship. And boy, action before we even got to the line in some cases. Race clutch lost the rear wing, satellite into the wall and up through turn 1. And it all just continued. The fight really, though, was between BMW M Team Redline and the Altus Esports Cadillac as they rumbled in through the opening cycles of traffic. And up the inside, it was Diogo Pinto that took the BMW M Team Redline machine to the race lead. Then in your GTD class, it was seemingly a bit of a breakaway at the front for the Mercedes-AMG Team Apex Racing team. But as the traffic started to play more and more of a factor, it started to bring some drama. BMW M Team BS competition tagged around by the Apex Racing team as Peter Barry with the pressure on down into turn number 5 and slightly got things wrong. Nicholas Boy, the one that lost out. And after an incredible opening stint from Eduardo Leo, Oscar Mangan straight into the car and straight around at turn 7, unfortunately. And then Casey Kerwin made a mistake of his own at the very same corner, fresh out of the pit stop cycle as well. It was some brave and bold moves, though. That was the BMW M Team Redline getting around their sister car as they worked their way through the final corner. The Lamborghini for Altus got a little bit hip check, as did the virtual coach by GG102 as they all rumbled their way down in through the S's. But ultimately, as the Team Redline machine ran its way into the wall, it was going to be the Urano Esports and Mercedes-AMG Apex Racing team that grabbed the victory. And Lewis, here's a look at the GTP standings.
Yeah, certainly after that race, Urano Esports Data Group, they're the ones that have snuck their way through to take that victory and obviously in the lead of the championship. All of these done in the position order that you would expect them to be in. So Williams and BMW M Team Redline obviously being moved back onto the podium after some post-race penalties that dropped the VRS Coanda 91 a bit further down the order. Altus Esports Obsidian inside the top 5. A couple of big names to talk about on all this. BMW M Team BS competition way further down the right-hand side, 18th position. Race clutch we know go quite well in this car. The XSET car in 11th. And I've been speaking to a couple of those. Casey Kerwin feeling a little bit more confident around Watkins Glen than he is here in the GTPs.
And of course, it's qualifying as well as the race that plays out the points. And as you take a look at the GTDs as well, you just look at how ultimately, Greg, a short 4-race championship and already some significant margins between the top 10.
Well, when you think about the numbers that you earned for a win, but you alluded to it, qualifying pays 1/10 of those points. So a good qualifying run, and if you can string them together over 4 short races, that can be the difference in a championship. So there is no respite here. You have got to be fast, and you've got to do it from that first green flag in qualifying.
And of course, look at the teams down at the very bottom as well. The Mercedes-AMG Williams Esports going to be probably one to watch as they try and rebound their way on forward, as well as Altus in their Porsche. Jordan Caruso not enjoying the best start to his IMSA Esports 2023 campaign. Let's talk through some of our takeaways from that opening round. And Greg, let's start with you. It was great to have you join us as we continue to blend the real and virtual in the world of IMSA Esports. What did you take away from Road Atlanta?
Well, it was great to be a part of it. I'm so excited about the rest of the season working with you guys. But to me, I always talk about that high-speed game of chess, and there's no more difficult chessboard than Road Atlanta because of the constant change of direction. And that means as all of the cars in the different classes are moving in different directions, These guys in these GTP cars have to literally thread the needle and be looking corners ahead to be able to make stuff work. I mean, look at this, up into turn 7, crucial corner here, and getting a drive out. One of the cars slowed up just a little bit, and now you've got to work through these GTD cars. You try and get a toe off them, but you pop out doing everything you can. But even on this straight, there's these little changes of direction, and it's absolutely crucial that you do this without any contact and upset the handling of your car, because it'll mess up your tires. This place is relentless in terms of mental focus. Road Atlanta is, Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. And then under the bridge and down the hill here, this is absolutely dangerous stuff, and you've got to be absolutely spot on to be able to get through and make these moves. Lewis?
Yeah, I mean, my main takeaway was about even the very best drivers. We got one of the strongest grids I've ever seen in the world of sim racing, and even a grid as strong as this made mistakes. On the start here for the GTPs, there was plenty of drama in the background, plenty of drama at turn 1, plenty of drama even all the way up into turn 2 and turn 3. Pure Sims being sent off the road, just trying to work past all of the drama before they'd rejoin. They'd get a slowdown from it as well, dropping them into the pack. It's so crazy, so difficult, and so brutal at the start of the race, but once we got through it, Arjun, it was pretty good.
Yeah, it was that initial start where realistically most of the tension was, and then after that it ended up being one of the more clean races that we've seen in history here at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. I think back to the iRacing Petit Le Mans and the various different events that we've had here. Yes, there were moments and pockets of chaos, but the majority of the field got through unscathed and was able to see the checkered flag in this first round of the championship, and now they'll just build that momentum on forward, heading to what might actually be, in some ways, maybe a more difficult track to manage all those multi-class traffic interactions. And of course, the chicane was one of the primary passing opportunities. The inner loop will probably be one of the passing opportunities that we're very much talking about over the course of today's running. But we are so excited to have not one, not two, but all 4 of the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car GTP machines available on iRacing for anyone to drive and to enjoy. If you're new to the world of sim racing, you're new to the world of motorsports, what does GTP mean? Well, let's check in with Calvin Fish to learn a little bit more about it.
The 2023 IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship marks the dawn of a new era for its premier prototype class, GTP. Your dream machine is now a reality in the form of Acura, BMW, Cadillac, and Porsche. These automotive giants have taken on this challenge to compete in what IMSA calls the Grand Touring Prototype class, meaning this machine can now compete here at home on US soil and across the pond in France, providing legendary team owners like Roger Penske and Chip Ganassi the opportunity to not only win the classic endurance races at Daytona and Sebring, but also challenge for the overall victory at Le Mans. The new car is mating the traditional internal combustion engine with electrification. The single-source hybrid powertrain will feature exceptional technology, relying on batteries that store and redeploy the energy generated during the race. This produces a combined energy output close to 700 horsepower and propels the cars to speed approaching 200 miles per hour. The vision and future of sports car racing that has been on the drawing board is now a reality in 2023.
Well, certainly so. We head to the Watkins Glen International Circuit. Somewhere tricky, maybe, but maybe even the easiest circuit on the calendar. Kind of discussed this a few times over at the previous round. The main talking point of this circuit is speed everywhere, up through the S's, in through the inner loop, and around the boot section, of course, running the full layout around here. It's going to be very, very tricky for a lot of our drivers to navigate, and we'll take a little look around it, of course, with Tommy Milner.
Hey everyone, I'm Tommy Milner, driver for Corvette Racing and co-owner of private label Team Hype. I'm going to take you on a lap around Watkins Glen. Alright, here we go. Last corner, setting up for one lap at Watkins Glen. Coming out of turn 1 here, a good passing opportunity for both GT3 and GTP cars. Really important to get a good drive out of the corner here, using all the road at the exit. Careful of track limits there. Through the uphill S's now. Really tricky to find your line if you're passing GT3 cars. But flat out should be doable. coming to the bus stop. The entry is super crucial to get the entry right. If you get it wrong, it's a big wreck. A lot of time to be had to the bus stop there. Now into the carousel, hoping the front bites. Entering the boot now into the laces. Really tricky downhill corner. The rear wants to step out on entry and the front wants to wash away mid-corner. Coming from the toe of the boot. Again, another good passing opportunity to get past GT3 cars. Now coming to the heel. A lot of camber at the apex here to really let the car kind of grip up mid-corner. Using all the road at the exit. Track limits here is going to be a concern. Now coming out of the boot. Again, tricky corner here. The rear wants to always slide. Trying to sneak on the inside here if you can on a GT3 car because you're flat out in these GTP cars. Coming to the final corner here, super fast. Trying to get the placement just right. Back on power again. And that's one lap at Watkins Glen.
What a lap it is as well at high speed. Let's not forget that the schedule for 2023 is effectively the inverted IMSA Michelin Endurance Cup. We started at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, the home of Petit Le Mans, run to the home of the 6 hours of the Glen before Sebring and Daytona in December to round things off. And Greg, I'm looking forward to those races and at Sebring. And of course, maybe there's no more fitting place to crown our champions than the Daytona International Speedway, the world's center of racing.
Yeah, I love this, as you said, running it backwards. Sorry about that, running it backwards for the Endurance Cup. And you're right, every one of these tracks is different, and that's what makes it so special. We go from a couple of very smooth tracks, then Sebring, the bumpiest track probably in the world, and everybody seems to love it that way. And then Daytona, it just is such an absolutely fascinating combination, a classic roval and one of the greatest, obviously. But obviously after round one, Arjuna, some BOP changes were in the works as well.
Yes, and this is where the data-driven approach and collaboration with the teams comes into play. They all have to submit data for a car that is not their own, so we know that they're going to try and get the maximum data for that car, so we can balance this out. Remember, this is also balancing out how they drive the cars, how they set the cars up, not how Lewis, Greg, or myself might do so. And so the BMW and the Cadillac, as well as the Acura, getting a bit more of a ding in the GTPs, as the Porsche 963 hopes for maybe a bit of relief in the GTDs. It's going to be interesting to see after it was Mercedes and Ferrari at the front for the most part, Lewis, in the first round of the championship, how the likes of BMW or Porsche can fight back.
Yeah, exactly. The slight changes in BOP, which will happen round to round, we'll just adjust things a little bit in class to make things maybe a little bit easier for some, less so for others, and trying to make it balanced on a round-to-round basis. What that means is, sometimes while some teams may have a stronger car on some circuits, it always kind of comes around and it's all about making the most of the car that you have on a given day. If it's good, go for it. If it's bad, tough.
Greg, in your mind as well, what should we expect at Watkins Glen?
Well, like I said, I think it's a little bit more open than Road Atlanta. Tommy talked about it, better passing zones for the prototypes to clear the GTD cars. But you are consistently rolling such high speed everywhere here, and you've got to be able to use the curbs. And generally the Cadillac has always been really good at being user-friendly over bumps. It could be really, really strong at this track.
Well, we're ready to go for round two of the 2023 IMSA Esports Global Championship. Don't go anywhere. We're ready to go racing at Watkins Glen International.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
You know as a driver when it's time to go.
It's going to be chaotic, a lot of cars, a lot of traffic.
It's been a gunfight every single weekend of you don't know who to watch.
In upstate New York. Welcome to round 2 of the 2023 IMSA Esports Global Championship as we make our way to one of the most historic tracks in all of North America. It's fast, it's flowing, and it's bound to be a furious 2 hours and 40 minutes of action. Welcome to IMSA TV and to the iRacing Esports Network. My name is Arjuna Kangipati, joined alongside by Lewis McLeod and Greg Creamer as we get ready to go racing. And Lewis, you talked about how in the countdown to green, even the best in the world can make mistakes. Here at Watkins Glen, I think we're kind of all just hoping that we're not going bowling today.
Yeah, indeed. That run down towards the first corner is always really tricky. The run up to the inner loop on the first lap is always tricky. I think we're going to see a few casualties in that early phase. You've just got to make sure that it's not you in the middle of it.
And one thing that we have to keep in mind as well, we're kind of matching some of the conditions that the drivers in the real world have to face. Last week at Road Atlanta, Greg, it was relatively cool. Drivers weren't so worried about tire conditions. Today at the Watkins Glen International, it's the middle of the virtual summer, and it is a scorcher on the track, and some of the teams are concerned about tires blowing even over the course of 40-minute stints.
I'm not surprised at that because the load here is so heavy. It's so smooth. It's incredibly grippy. It's not particularly hard on tires, but when you have that ability to load up, especially the prototypes, and then you are clipping all those curbs, it's very easy to overstress tires. Tire management is always going to be important here, but with the temperatures you're talking about, it becomes exponentially so. They've got to be a little bit careful today.
Don't forget that you can head on to iRacing.com to learn a little bit more about how to join all of the fun. New memberships are, I think, 50% off, and there's Black Friday renewal sales as well, so always fun to see where you can get involved. Let's run you down through the starting grid, and boy, do the BMW M-Team BS competition pin their hopes on Nicholas Boyd to try and run their way from the front after a disappointing start to the season. Diogo Pinto alongside in the BMW M-Team Redline car with Eduardo Lear for Altus backing up the pole position at Road Atlanta, showing the speed. Zach Campbell for Coanda will be in the 92.963 on the outside of the second row with Race Clutch inside of Peter Berryman and the BMW for the Apex Racing team on the third row of the grid. Williams Esports ran strong in the opening round. They're alongside the Drago Racing 69 on the fourth row, while our race winners a week ago, Dominic Hoffman and Urano, have it all to do once more after a disappointing qualifying, starting in ninth alongside the Exet Cadillac with Owen Carroll behind the wheel. CrowdStrike and Sam Michaels alongside with Daniel Kraft in the Pure Sims Acuras respectively, with the second CrowdStrike machine Fraser Williamson alongside Satellite Racing and Alex Ellis. It will be Orion and Obsidian in their pair of Porsches on the eighth row of the grid, with the private label Team Hype and Philip Krause alongside Graham Sanders in the Hydrace Geodesic Racing car. Wave Italy Racing then alongside our guest entrants for today, the Texaco Racing by TK Squad, Victor Miranda there, and then Michael Romanidis and Coanda's final car at the back after being barred from qualifying. We've got two classes to talk about as well, and another team looking for a bounce back. It's Jordan Caruso and Altus's 143 Porsche that's on pole, alongside Gianni Vecchio in that Redline 170 that put the pressure on at the very front of the field a week ago. Simify and McFarlane for Pure Sims on the second row with Grid and Go and their virtual coach.gg machine with Sven Haase alongside on that third row of the grid. BS Turner and the Apex Racing 199 on the fourth row of the grid with Oscar Pai and Luca Kita making up the rest of your top 10 for Coanda and the Mercedes Urano teams. Daniel Pastro is feeling a little little under the weather. He rolls alongside Felix Kornbach for the Marla team, with Antti Ahola and the Team 75 Bernard by Sim RC Machine, alongside a team that's looking for 6 wins in a row, but has it all to do from 14th. Alejandro Sanchez for the Mercedes Apex team. Dorr and Maniti on the 8th row as Williams Mercedes, and then Drago on the 9th rows of the grid. And of course, 25 machines were still going to Delta Sport Brabham, Mercedes Urano, and the final of the cars with the time on the board, Grid and Go, Altus, and then Arnage Competition, the top 24 drivers and teams that will roll, and Impulse as well. Last minute replacements for a handful of drivers sees them start at the very back of the grid. So, the stage is set for the drivers. Lewis, what do you think are our Michelin keys to the race here today?
Well, the first one, and probably the most important, don't miss the bus. Stop. That will be that at the inner loop. That is probably one of the hardest parts of this entire circuit. If you make a mistake through there, you take too much of the curve, it can put you in a wrong line going into the carousel. Navigating traffic through there is the narrowest part, it's the hardest part. It's going to be very, very tricky indeed. Second one, watch your pit speed. The pit entry around here is one of the trickiest to navigate, especially around all of the traffic. It's one of the most dangerous, one of the most brutal. Got to bring it down onto the right speed without speeding into pit lane and avoiding all of the other cars around on the circuit. It's going to be one that's going to be quite a contentious topic. And the second, or rather the final one, the third and final, kind of touched on it a little bit in the track map, attack the track. It is probably the easiest one on the calendar, but what that means is you can get a little bit complacent around here. If you do get complacent, that's where mistakes come from, and the circuit around here will bite. You have to get the absolute most out of it by being brave, by taking the most out of as much as you can, even more so than most of the circuits we visit. As despite it being simple, it can be tricky.
And this is one of the sections of the track where I think we're going to see the most danger potentially in towards the inner loop, with its high curbs on either side of the track, and the GTPs in particular are going to be hoping that their aerodynamic platform is not too unsettled, because this is the thing with an aerodynamic car, Greg. You want to make it as stiff as possible so that you have it not losing its aero balance through a corner, but at the same time, stiffer means less compliant over the bumps.
And that's the great compromise that we're talking about. You want that really good platform for fast changes of direction, but as you said, you hit bumps, you get run wide somewhere, or you lose aero, you get overly slowed somewhere. That can create its own issues. The other thing that I just want to quickly bring up here, there's a number of places on this track where it goes from what seems like massively wide into very narrow between the guardrails, where you have to almost drive it like a street course, and you've got to get things sorted out before you get there, because an incident is going to be huge. And Arjuna, I think we are getting set up here. We are going to have a split start, are we not?
Yes, that's the great thing as well. We have the split class start, the leader in control of the respective fields as they head into the start zone, and that's where some of the drivers, Lewis, got a bit caught out a week ago. We'll be hoping for a little less drama, and you can see just how separated out the two classes are as well.
Yeah, certainly, obviously, to make things a little bit more controlled so the GTDs don't get involved in the GTP's mess, although considering how messy it was at Road Atlanta, they'll be looking to avoid that one on this start. I did want to touch on one very quick thing. Obviously, Urano Esports Data Group, our championship leaders, starting from 9th position in the GTPs. Well, they started lower than that in Road Atlanta, and they still took victory. They are the masters in this class right now.
The BMW did get 5 extra kilograms added just a couple of days ago in response to data submitted by the teams. I'm going to put you on the spot. Greg, who wins in the GTP class?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a tough call. I've got a feeling it could be Altus Esports. I really think that Cadillac's going to be effective around here.
Lewis, how about yourself? That's a bold call.
Bam, straight in.
Okay, well, the predictions have been laid down in the GTP class. We're ready to go for round 2 of the 2023 IMSA Esports Global Championship. Remember, ignore the green flag. It's all in control of Nicholas Boy in that BMW M Team BS competition car as we get underway in upstate New York. A great job from the BMW M Hybrid V8, and a look to the inside from Michael Romanidis in the second of the Coanda cars. Down through the 90, cars building up the speed, using their hybrid to the advantage, and now climbing up what is 100 feet of elevation. It's single file inside the top 10. Still a couple of cars further back trying to sort things out as we scramble up towards the inner loop. But a nice tidy start for all 21 of the GTPs. Exactly what we want to see. And Lewis, here come the GTDs fanning out down to the 90.
Yeah, indeed. Is it going to be as clean in this side? You've got Grid and Go looking straight down the inside of that Pure Sims Michelin car as they run their way through the first corner. Look at how far out wide they go. And it's the Pure Sims car that's backwards, right in front of the middle of the pack. And that crash has taken them all the way up to turn 2. Huge drama and all that. I think Dur Esports are also involved.
Team 75, I saw, got mixed up on the timing screen as well, but big drama, and they're still not done in terms of sorting this out. Mercedes, AMG, Williams looking to the inside, and on the red line, Ferrari's up towards the inner loop, where there's a little bit more smoke still lurking, but it's Caruso from Vecchio from Iglesias, the top 3, not changing around, as the GTDs head off into the boot section. And Greg, the fact that we got the split start as well is going to mean there's less time before the GTPs overlap themselves onto the GTDs.
I was going to talk about that. They're going to be coming really, really quickly. Again, you're going to have these big differences in lap speeds, and so it's not going to be long before the guys at the back of the GTP field are going to really have to start paying attention to their mirrors, get that track awareness, their spidey sense tingling, because they're going to be coming after these guys in that GTD class, and they've got to be ready for it.
Big drama as well. What happened to Williams Esports in the number 11? Because they're down on pit lane, and that is a championship contending car that is potentially done for the race. So we're done with one lap for the GTPs. The GTDs are coming to the end of their first lap as well, with some swap arounds and a breakaway inside of the top 3. But big drama as Zach Campbell now runs wide in the VRS Coanda car, bumps his way back onto the track, and the Drago Acura's into the wall, Lewis.
Yeah, I was going to say about the Drago Acura, you want to see what happened to the Williams Esports car. It was at the inner loop, got a little bit of a clout on the rear end from the Drago racing cars. They were already in trouble, and then that rejoin from Zach Campbell. Again, we don't, well, you two, whatever. I don't believe in the commentator's curse this side of the commentary booth, although that said, I might have launched a little bit that on the VRS Commander, but that's fine, I'm not going to talk about it.
That's a shame as well, as again, we're only done with 2.5 minutes in this 2-hour 40-minute race. Minimum driver time, Greg, it's 45 minutes. And the 2-hour and 40-minute distance is an awkward race distance to plan your stints around.
Well, you've got to literally back time everything, don't you? You go to the finish of the race, you open those windows up, and we saw at the first round, drivers that were able to save a little bit of fuel were able to extend those windows, and all that does is gives you better options. As we take a look at the replay of this start in GT Daytona, and it was pretty processional for GTP, not here.
And so Doors, Porsche's behind Team 75, and they're going to come across the BMW that's already spun itself around. It's the rejoin back onto the track that there's tarmac there, but you've got to be careful when you rejoin, and poor Impulse Racing lose the front end on their Ferrari. It was a clumsy start there for the GTDs, and I will note, while that's going to be under investigation, Lewis, the start for the GTPs is also under investigation. There's a potential jump start for Nicholas Boy in that BMW M Team BS competition car.
I was going to say about all of our picks. Well, I say all of our picks. 2 people in the comments picked. One person avoided that selection, Arjuna, when it comes to picking the race victory. But that's absolutely fine. Each to their own. We didn't pick BMW M Team BS competition. Watch what happened to the Williams here. So Drago Racing, Maciejewski is going to be the one directly into the rear. It's just a slight tap. Kind of couldn't really see it there, but a bit of a tap onto the rear end and sent that Williams car into the barrier. And yeah. That car is DONE, lads. It's gone.
All 4 corners of that car are done as well. I don't think there's a single body part that looks okay. Was there contact, Lewis, or was that just the bump over the curb?
As far as I have seen, looking at it from my end, there was absolute contact.
For the lead, Caruso alongside Vecchio, and it's the red line Ferrari that goes to the front. And Greg Creamer, red line's watch along, has got a certain Max Verstappen cheering them on today. He'll be going bonkers at that move.
Well, absolutely, and in the race at Road Atlanta, Vecchio did an absolutely superb job of having that car in a beautiful place, turned it over to Ali, who then put in an absolutely staggering drive, and to see them right up at the front early, yeah, Max is going to be lit, but this is not a spot that I think if you're one of the competitors, you want to see them leading early based on what we saw at Road Atlanta. And I think in that GTP incident in the inner loop, it looked to me like the car that touched the car that got walled really hammered the curb, and it got that car all out of shape, and I think that's maybe where the touch came.
Well, that Drago car, of course, hit the wall, I think the next lap over the curbs as well, so clearly maybe a bit too stiff there, and is down on pit lane, so regardless of whether there was something for race control to investigate. I can tell you that they are going to be looking at it. It's just popped up onto the board for race control to peek at. It will be something to keep in mind. This, though, is maybe a bit of a storyline that, Lewis, not many will have picked on out. Of course, we had IMSA Esports running in the IMSA Esports Global Championship in 2022. Another team that unfortunately parted ways at the end of the year. Some of their drivers stayed together. Simufy representing themselves now in this Porsche. And they're running behind Altus and Jordan Caruso. Tristan Iglesias, what was his last team before he joined up with Simufy? Oh wait, it was Altus Esports.
Yeah, exactly. A bit more on the line then to make that move. But of course, right now, it doesn't matter about being ahead of them. It's about beating them at the end of the race at that checkered flag. See if there is going to be a move back here from Altus Esports. I don't believe so. Of course, you know, when you're sat there behind, it's a little bit weird because you kind of think, well, it's just a livery, it's just a team. But nah, see, even in sim racing, it means something to pass and to beat your old team. You want to show them that you're the one moving forward. I remember when I've moved, anytime I've moved out of sim racing teams, my first objective in the next race is to make sure that I've beaten that team. I don't care if I've won the race or if we're in 15th or whatever. I just want to be at least one position ahead of them.
They really pushed the limit. Sorry, down out of the hill. Just watching them kick grass up. It's really just shows how much limits they take. And talking of limits, in towards the bus stop. Oh, Zach Campbell's Porsche pushed the limit there, Greg.
He really overshot that, and then that was what happened. I think coming back in, that car, I think he just overreacted a little bit, trying to give more room, thinking that he was going to come across, and then just got out on the marbles, and it was done. And I'll tell you, in the GTD battle right now, Tristan Iglesias is really Gianni Vecchio's. Ooh, what happened?
That was 4 wide without a shadow of a doubt, and the Apex Racing Team BMW is still trying to make it 3 wide as we head up towards the penultimate corner. Lewis, the first cycle's always the most crazy. This is ridiculous.
Oh, I'm uncomfortable. I'm very uncomfortable. Oh, going to the outside through the final corner. Thing is, Eduardo Lea, if he'd have backed himself up a little bit, he could have worked his way through. Look at this, so close for the race lead. It's BMW MTB's competition defend from Team Redline. That was so sketchy on the run down towards the first corner. And look at all these GTDs, just basically like, oh lads, just get out of their way. This is a disaster waiting to happen.
I think they've forgotten that they've still got 2 hours and 30 minutes to go, but you sense that the lead is something that people want. It's not about fuel saving here today. Through the traffic, surely not going to be a pass through the inner loop. No, Pinto back into line. And look at Leo Chow, very, very wide. Got a big moment there as he tried to go too wide with a GTD machine, and it's allowed Greg a bit of a breakaway down into the boot.
Well, traffic giveth, traffic taketh away, and you know, this is what we were talking about. It was going to happen in a hurry when the leaders of the GTP caught the back, and at that point, suddenly everything sort of went out the window, and we saw cars 3 abreast entering the S's, which is absolutely not well advised. Somehow they made it work, but this is sketchy at the extreme here, and Nicholas Bauer right now doing everything he can up in the front.
I'm pretty sure that BMW MTBS competition car made contact with Simufy coming up through that long right-hander. Lewis, you said you're uncomfortable. I don't think I've ever been so uncomfortable through traffic.
Yeah, and that was not pretty, but then this is why, again, why we're talking about the very best doing this. If there's anyone that can navigate in those kind of scenarios, I mean, I distinctly remember, some of the races that I've commentated on, whether it's been the iRacing special events, whether it's been, even the previous round, obviously some of the other stuff that I've done, Le Mans Virtual, stuff like that. When you see the absolute best drivers in sim racing, when they navigate through the traffic, it's high risk, high reward, and they are rolling their way through constantly. It is honestly terrifying, but again, that's why we see the absolute best doing it. Let's see what's happened to the private label Team Hype car.
Yeah, I just saw Adam Blocker rolling down the timing order on my screen, which indicated since Phil Kraus started that something went wrong. Oh, up the top of the S's, chinking to the inside, and is there going to be more with a geodesic car? Yes, there is. Oh, it doesn't get much more high speed than that.
I see.
And that is precisely one of those areas when those barriers come in so close. That precision driving's everything, and if it goes wrong there, that's what's going to happen. You're going to get that pinball effect, and you can take out one or more other cars in this one as well.
Oh, you can see those manufacturers on the left-hand side of the screen. It's BMW 1, 2, 5 and 6, at least for the time being. It's the Cadillac and the Acura that currently run in between them, and it goes to show if you stay out of trouble at the start. Race Clutch lost their rear wing before they even got into turn number 1 at the start of our first race. Running in 4th position, still with the leaders through traffic. Just got to keep your nose clean. What do they say in IMSA in the real world, Greg? Just keep on the lead lap within the last 60 minutes. You've still got a shot of winning.
That's the key. I mean, look at what happened at the Petit Le Mans. Again, that's a much longer race, but it was the same thing. The guys that won, they were well down on that lead lap heading into the last hour, but they were on that lead lap. They were able to come through. Yes, they had yellows, which we're not going to have here, but you've just got to stay in touch. And I have a question for you guys. On this track, have they just sort of, as iRacing sort of unchecked the track limits box?
I was about to bring this up as well. Track limits aren't really seeming like a thing, aren't you? They're all over the place. This is probably more in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, the track limits at Watkins Glen are a little bit more generous than maybe some would want. And oh, poor Drago. The GTP's had issues. The GTD has issues as well. And it comes as we get the first drive-through penalty. It's the Team 75 Bernard by a Sim RC car, which, by the way, that is one of the best liveries on the grid. It matches what they run in the real world. But race control, we talked about unsafe rejoins at the start, Lewis. I think they were right on top of that.
Yeah, like I say, I'm not super surprised that we're seeing a couple of penalties. We did see quite a lot in the last round, including a couple for this car right here, Team Redline. We saw a few, wasn't there was quite a few for the track limit excursion, which obviously race control were taking a quick look at, but then obviously various bits of car contact. Very easy to pick up some penalties. I'm sure a few teams are already expecting it, including, of course, BS Competition with that potential jump start.
Yes, so I haven't seen anything final on that. We got 96 different incident reports last week, hoping that we don't get up to that so far, but who knows? We've only had 30 minutes complete. Let's see if we can catch up with one of the drivers, though. We've seen, of course, issues for Drago Racing so far, and I think Greg Creamer is ready to have a little chat with their own Ricardo Rico.
Absolutely, Ricardo. Really a tough start for you guys. You just seemed like you were in the wrong spot a couple of times, and it also looked like you had a really rough ride over the curbs in the early going into the inner loop. You know, what's your take on things?
Hi guys. Sorry, I couldn't hit you at the beginning. Could you repeat, please?
Sure. The opening laps for you guys were pretty crazy and fraught out there. You looked like you were in the wrong spot at the wrong time a couple of times, but also looked like a really rough ride going into the inner loop at one point. Did that affect the car?
Since the start, we were pretty good. Like the only problem we had was the hit with the GTP that I'm looking now at it. It was pretty unlucky.
Yeah, it was very, very unlucky. Obviously, not the way you want to start off this race and you know, second round of the championship. What recourse do you have now?
I don't know. Right now I'm super angry, and we were looking very good on pace. We don't know what's the thing that we are lacking on qualis, but in pace it was looking like a very good race. So I'm super disappointed right now. Can't tell you more, to be honest.
Yeah, I understand that. We'll let you go. I know you're frustrated, and you're right. You guys look like you had really good race pace. Hate to see this happen this way for you.
And you can hear the disappointment, but
yeah,
it's where the big teams also have to go back and do their debriefs, understand what they've done wrong, what they can do differently. And in the case of BMW M Team BS Competition, start in the correct zone, it would turn out. They're going to get a 10-second time penalty, which is added at the end of the race, Lewis. I mean, it's pretty slam dunk if you start in the correct zone or not. Yeah,
exactly, which is kind of... I always say this when it comes to like when it's a basic operational error, and I'm looking at it being like, okay, how? And it goes back to some of the discussions that we were having slightly before. Obviously, you know, they have drivers briefings and all that kind of stuff. We were having a discussion before we went live as to how many drivers and teams actually consult a rule book before we begin rounds. And I do believe that in the world of sim racing, the percentage is concerningly low, as has been fairly evident on the build up to this. But that's for the teams to decide and not us. They just really need to get their light evening reading going.
And Lewis saying the things that I'm not allowed to say. Battle for 5th in the GTD with VRS Coanda, virtualcoach.gg, and the Mercedes-AMG Williams Esports car. Important as well to see them recover some decent points after both of their cars experienced difficulties in the early stages. 7th and 9th position is not a terrible place to be for the time being, but for a team as big and as dominant as Williams, they expect nothing but success, and you have to assume that they'll be hoping for a little bit more. That was a look to the inside, though, by the Ferrari being piloted by Sven Haase on Oscar Pai. We saw the Grid and Go car running decently back at Road Atlanta, and it's running pretty decently here as well. You have Ferrari leading the way from Porsche, Mercedes, the first of the BMWs down in 10th. Again, BOP cannot be judged over one lap, Greg. We've got to judge it over the entirety of the race.
And that's exactly right, because it really comes down to performance over a stint that you have to sort of factor into it, and that's really key. And I'm looking right now, top 4 in this race, 3 different of the GTP manufacturers there. So, and all running very similar times at this point. So you've got to be pretty pleased with it. And then in the GT Daytona category, same story. In the top 4, 3 different manufacturers right now. So everybody running pretty well. Looks like they may have been able to close that up just a little bit at the stage. Up front, though, those top 4 have been given a little bit of a break, haven't they?
Yeah, in both classes, some breaks being given through the traffics as a whole. As we jump on board with Haase, you see that the Coanda car runs a little bit wide, on board with the look over the shoulder of Sven Haase is not driving a boat, but that's what he does in the real world, Lewis. Just want to make sure I'm clear when I say that.
Well, I mean, just say, can we really touch on the track limits once again? Because everyone's blasting over them a little bit. Obviously, this is the newer version of Watkins Glen on the server. Again, we were kind of discussing this a little bit before we went live. I've actually not driven the newer version of Watkins Glen. It's been so long since I've actually driven Watkins Glen. Love the track, Dave. Is that allowed? What they're doing on the track? Because it's a bit wild.
That is the natural
not in
line.
real life, no.
It's the natural line that we've been running in the sim, and so it's been carried over into this as well, and the drivers are allowed. We did have much tighter restrictions last week at turn 3, at turn 10 at Road Atlanta, where there were quite a few warnings that were applied to drivers and almost some penalties, if I remember correctly as well. But yeah, guidance for this week is a little bit more fast and loose, and they're encouraged to take advantage. I will just point out, this corner at turn 9, that's not an off track in the sim. That is, they are allowed to do that.
Yeah, which it's kind of like, as much as I'm looking at it being like, that's ridiculous. I can look at it and I can be like, look, if they're allowed to do it and they're all doing it, that's fine. I don't have a problem with it. It's kind of the ones where like you're not allowed to do it and they're still doing it anyway. That's fine. So we'll watch them sort of ignoring the track for those parts. Absolutely fine. It does mean though that you're carrying a lot more speed up the hill and a lot more speed around the circuit, so it should be pretty crazy. By the way, I'm looking at, I decided to look back in my notebook at my notes from the last round. I wish I'd written them in any sort of order or organisation, because I was trying to find out who went long in the GTPs. I finally found it. It's Charlie Collins and Dom Hoffman. They went long. So I wonder if they're going to do the same here.
As we take a look at the replay, I'll just note that they're through traffic once more, and the top 2 in class are breaking away. It doesn't help if you make repeated mistakes like Eduardo Leo is doing in traffic, and it took out Delta Sport, it would seem, in their Lamborghini GTD, as we see the car file its way through the exit of the shot. Your leader able to put 1, 2, 3 different GTD machines between him and that 71 BMW Team Redline car that goes around the outside of the outer loop, where the downforce really plays its part. And now let's see if there's going to be a bit of a breakaway building as Race Clutch dive down the inside. And this is the second cycle of traffic, Greg. It's the second time that the drivers have seen familiar faces and teams that maybe they're watching out for now.
Well, and you get to know your competitors, and certainly the ones in the quote-unquote slower class that you're going to be overtaking, and you learn how to read them. The one thing I want to say that makes this track, and Lewis, I think this sort of gets back to what you're saying about this track maybe being a little easier than some of the others, is that with the exception here of, say, turn 9 and maybe down into the laces, this isn't a one-lane track. And when you've got a car with a lot of downforce like these GTP prototypes, in turns like the outer loop, turn 5, and in some of the other corners, there's a little bit of camber, and so you can run that wide line and scoot around other cars. You're doing it at immense pace, obviously, but it is doable.
That's until you get into traffic. And it's what you attack traffic at such unbelievably high speed. You've got to be brave to work your way down.
So I've just realized something. Is Peter Zuber not actually wearing his headset right now? Because he's got the ear cups around his neck and then that microphone kind of stuck up so that he can actually still communicate with his teammates. But it's one of the more unique setups that I've ever seen. Is 4 cars, oh look at this, all on top of one another. It's the 92 with Campbell behind the wheel, the 90 with Dominic Hoffman for Urano, 95 with Owen Carroll, and Sam Michaels in that CrowdStrike car is down into the boot once more we go. And as they have now filtered past the entirety of the GTD machines once more, they can focus in on this little fight. The mistake that Zach Campbell made, Greg, has dropped him back, crucially, positions on track, but more importantly, time on track as well, because he was up there in 3rd and 4th position, but now finds himself 6 seconds off the leader.
Well, a track position is crucial when you're at a track where you're running at such consistent high speeds, and it becomes very difficult to make that time back up again, because everybody at this level, these are the pros, you know, they're all running relatively within tenths of each other. So it's a big job, and again, without having the full course cautions this year, it's going to be really difficult to make that ground up. That's where you hope you can run cleaner through traffic, and the guys in front of you struggle a little bit. That's one way that they can come back to you.
So as you see them running a little bit wide once again, just trying to build a little bit more momentum up through 100 feet of elevation. It's about 20 minutes complete. We're up to 19 different incidents on the board, and I was just about to note that the BS Turner machine, no bias here. Unfortunately, they've got a drive-through penalty for a slight bit of contact with Delta Sports Lamborghini, and so it's a split liveried machine that of course won Sebring in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge when it was adorned on a BMW M4 GT4. That makes this slow roll down with Phil Denez behind the wheel. It's about a 27-second time loss, and that will drop them back in the running order as the second of the red line machines look to try and maybe work their way on forward. But Sven Haase tries to build his way past that VRS Coanda car that Lewis is a bit of a cork in the bottle right now.
Certainly seems it, but you know, it is what it is. As we can see them run into the carousel, into the outer loop. Obviously, around here, you know, obviously all these teams will be running slightly different strategies and stuff. It is when it comes to fuel miles. But they said not too worried fuel miles wise, especially in the GTD category, mostly courtesy of we know they'll be making 2 stops, so you can kind of split it 50-50, as in 50 minutes, then 50 minutes. And take them to the checker flag. So it's interesting to kind of see that some teams are already running maybe a little bit slower than expected, but I wouldn't be too worried about it for them at the moment. You can just see the pressure building. No one's in a rush to get past. That's what I'm kind of getting from this.
Yeah,
guys, no. I want to ask you guys a quick question. Our winner at round 1 sitting 12th in class right now. You know, any feedback that you've heard as to what they're struggling with?
Well, it all starts in qualifying. I think that's it, right? The margins are so tight. They started down in 14th spot, and for them, that's a pretty tough spot. You can see on the left side of the screen the entirety of the GTD running order. All 25 of those machines almost stacked up on that timing tower as we look off the back of the 17-year-old Oscar Pai out of France, karting competitor in both world and European championships. But, I mean, Greg, how many runs have you seen where drivers and teams have been able to win 5 races in a row? At some point, the streak has to end.
It does, and but this just seems like a massive change from running and getting 5 straight wins to almost missing the top 15 in qualifying. Clearly, they just didn't get something right, and they're really going to have to struggle to get back into it and keep competitive in terms of these points.
Yeah. We'll see traffic play its part in probably about 3 laps time or so. There is the 101. We were talking a little bit about this livery yesterday, Lewis. No highlights to differentiate this from any other Apex Mercedes, which is a good thing that they don't have another Mercedes. They've got a BMW instead.
But they still should have highlights on it. I'm sorry, but we should still keep those Valentino Rossi, the Day Glow yellow highlights. Just saying, just a note for the Apex Racing team. That I would like that, and a shirt. Also, just a touch on this from Alejandro Sanchez. His qualifying record, we were speaking about this last time, was the 3rd consecutive pole for him in IMSA Esports, obviously, at the last round at Road Atlanta. His qualifying record is 3rd, 1st, and then what is it, 13th, 14th? wild. That's crazy. Again, it just shows the level of competition on this, and we were kind of talking about this coming into the season, that the Apex Racing team weren't going to have quite an as comfortable ride in 2023 as they did last year.
Yeah, the 199 BMW, which doesn't have Alex Dunn today. He has other commitments, so Jimmy Antunes steps in instead.
And it was his birthday yesterday.
Oh, it was his birthday yesterday.
So happy birthday to Alex Dunn yesterday.
Happy birthday, Alex Dunn. So they qualified up in 8th position. They're down in 15th. The streak for Apex seemingly might be coming to a close. It's all about, can Jordan Caruso close what's now a 2-second advantage that Gianni Vecchio has been able to build. That Team Redline 170, it's flying today, Greg, much like it was with Ole Steinbraten behind the wheel a week ago.
Yeah, that car really seems to be working. Oh, and then a big moment there. Saw one of those cars spear off after the deep car, I think. It
Team
sure
Redline.
did. Yeah.
That's a Ferrari that's going nowhere quickly.
Yeah, he broke. I think it was out of 8, wasn't it? The 171 of Josh Thompson. And that's what happens. You get it wrong in the bus stop. You're so on the edge over those curbs, and you catch it just wrong. It loads the car up wrong, and then you get the tire bite or the complete lack of it, and off you go. But boy, this is he's stacking up even more fiercely right now. And Oscar Pye under huge pressure here, and able to hang on to it as they work their way down and through the bottom of the boot, the toe of the boot, and up the hill into a really tricky corner here. Huge defense right now.
And I'm going to just say that I think there's going to be a penalty as a result of that, and it's for a car that's already just got a drive-through. Arnage Competition and Taylor Barnard have worked their way up plenty of positions, but they made contact once with an Apex Racing team car. They've just made contact with a Team Redline car, at least from the perspective that I saw of the angle, and so I would not be shocked if the Norwich from the United Kingdom, driver from Norwich from the United Kingdom ends up on pit lane. Lewis, I mean, I just got myself stumbled up there. Margin at the front, 1.7 seconds though.
Yeah, exactly. The other was one Team Redline car, which, by the way, couldn't see what number it was on the side of the car. Congratulations to them. Yeah, obviously one of those now out of the race. The second one, though, is leading in the GTD category and looking pretty comfortable. The 170 pulling itself firm and away. Gianni Vecchio, of course, pieced himself together. I think some of the passes through traffic just allowed him to pull that gap through from Jordan Caruso. Exactly, you know, he's not exactly a slouch. Certainly not when it comes to Porsches as well, which is what he's driving at the moment. Obviously, there's larger gaps behind. I wouldn't be too concerned about the gaps at the moment. Remember, we are only approaching half an hour into a 2-hour and 40-minute race. These gaps can chop and change, especially when it comes to the odds penalty as Williams look to the inside of grid and go.
I think there is more and more of a intensity building here as the lunge from Daniel Pastor doesn't see him get totally alongside, and now contact made. Squeeze to the grass, and that's the Sven Haase that I think plenty will know. Pastor backs out of it. Opportunity presented as a swarm of Mercedes all on top of one another. Haase out wide. Barnard around the outside, and these drivers are now a good 13 seconds, Greg, off of your race leader.
Well, and you start doing that kind of blocking, and that's what that was. He drifted over so far, gave him no room, there was contact, and oftentimes that affects you, and it certainly can affect what's going on and bottle everybody up here, and car diving for the pits. And that's what you were talking about with that crazy pit lane entrance. It's so diabolical there, the 111 of Barnard in.
And so that's for the drive-through penalty. And again, I'm not going to be shocked if there's another one to come as a result of that. Subsequent bit of contact with Josh Thompson.
That's by the way, for me, that's a slam dunk penalty for Sven Haase. That was a horrible bit of driving. Whilst all that's happened, by the way, the Mercedes AMG teams, Urano has got past Williams. Of course, they're no team affiliates, as we see once again the GTPs are working their way through in all of this. Who's worked up into 7th in class? By the way, they were up in the 6th a few moments ago before getting passed by the 92. But the Urano Esports Data Group car. The 90 and the 92 running in 6th and 7th, I will touch on it a little bit. Last round, they went longer than basically everyone else in the class. So watch for those to potentially do maybe the same thing today.
Yeah, and there's not going to be a pit stop cut out as we take a look on board with Taylor Barnard's perspective, but there could just be a bit of a window. I mean, that's as clear a case of driving through someone as I think you're ever going to see, and one drive-through penalty will probably lead to another one, Greg.
Yeah, that was, I missed that in that first moment that we saw, that little bit of a touch. I thought he just lost it over the curb. He definitely got assisted, and yep, I would think that is a pretty blatant a moment there. You know, just quickly as we're watching the prototypes working their way through the GTD field, we were talking about it early in the race. Tristan Iglesias in the Simified Porsche was really occupying the attention of Jordan Caruso, and that's when Gianni was able to open up a little bit of a margin. Once he got to the front, he's consistently been lapping a tenth or two quicker than anybody else in class here, as we continue to watch that Cadillac working its way around some of this traffic here in the hands of Eduardo Leo.
I've seen a couple of teams have come into the pit lane, so just keep that in mind in this GTP class, that potentially there are drivers thinking about that. But I wonder what Tony Kanaan will be thinking about. He had the opportunity to drive a very special McLaren Formula One car, at least to his personal history, and now he's maybe watching his esports Chargers do battle. It's Victor Miranda that's along, so that's a very wide line out of turn number one. Victor Miranda alongside Jackson Rosende that are going to be behind the wheel of the number 17 machine. Lewis, the only reason that we don't see Gustavo Ariel in the car is because he's flying back from Denmark to Brazil today after wrapping up his commitments for ESLR1, but we have increasingly seen Texaco Racing by TK nab more and more of the top quality talent from South America.
And there's so much out there. It's kind of one of the things that we've spoken about an awful lot in esports and sim racing for the last, particularly the last couple of years, is that sim racing is very much a North American and European-based esport. That's where a lot of it happens. It's where a lot of the focus is, and that's absolutely fine. But sometimes we forget about the talent outside of that. South America, and in that, to be fair, particularly Brazil, has such an unbelievable talent base, of which we have seen our fair share. World champions and such have come from Brazil and stuff. But yeah, it's nice to see a team kind of like nabbing a couple of them and thinking, right, we can make a Brazilian, or at least a South American, even super team for the world of sim racing. Which, to be perfectly honest, I'm quite alright with seeing, especially if you can incorporate the Brazilian flag onto the livery a little bit. I'd love to see that.
We're talking a bit about semi-final. Altus Iglesias chasing down a former teammate. Well, Zach Campbell, former Apex Racing team driver, and maybe a driver that can put part of his development down to joining the Apex Racing Academy all those years ago, is up against Peter Berryman in the battle for 5th position. This is the BMW versus the Porsche as they run their way down through the boot section. In that car alongside Zach Campbell today is, I think, going to be a very popular driver in a certain region of the world, Greg. It's Ayhan Guven, and the Turkish fans will be out in force to see Ayhan back into the sim. And I haven't had the pleasure of meeting him myself, but everyone that I've talked to says he is the most funny and likable person that you can talk to, which is a good thing for a racing driver that has to be quite lighthearted a lot of the time, you'd assume.
Well, it's good to have that kind of a mindset, isn't it? Where, because, people sometimes tend to forget racing's supposed to be fun, whether it's real world or sim, and you're supposed to enjoy it. And if you get just too caught up in it, you lose the enjoyment, and, that has its own adverse effects. So it's great to hear that. And, the question is he quick in the sim?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah, he's fast. He's genuinely, he's one of the fastest drivers that I've seen, like, do both real world driving and sim driving. We've seen him a lot. In fact, actually, I knew him far more as a sim driver than I do as a real world driver. And that's not, that most of it, obviously, my main focus is sim racing. But the point is that he is like one of the fastest.
And I think he'll be cheering on Zach Campbell, who gets a big wiggle through that curve. Yeah, we talked about the curves at the inner loop being a potential danger spot for the GTPs. The Porsche, the one that's the seemingly most at risk for it, given the relatively stiff aero platform that it has. And Campbell out of Lawrenceville, Georgia, which is seemingly a bit of a hub for prototype drivers, because we have 20 cars, full-time cars in the series, 40 drivers therefore, 2 drivers per car. How do we have 2 drivers from Lawrenceville, Georgia? Dion Fiallo is also based out of Lawrenceville. It's just interesting to see where some of these drivers are. Although, I guess it makes sense, Greg, when you're so close to the Atlanta Motorsports Park, so close to Road Atlanta, I guess you naturally grow up a fan of prototype racing.
Well, there's a group there in real world driving too that they call the Atlanta Gang. Spencer Pompelli and a number of other drivers based in the Atlanta area. And it all really comes around to just what an effect on sports car racing Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta has had. It draws a lot of people there because it's a track that you can run almost all year round.
It's a really interesting facility as well. Talk about the gaps very quickly. GTD's up to 3 seconds as Vecchio pulls away in that number 170. No such luck so far for the GTPs. And let's just remind you that the BMW M Team BS Plus competition has a 10-second time penalty. It's not going to be applied during the race. It's something that has impacts at the end of the race. Realistically, Lewis, they're trying to pull 10 seconds on the rest of the field come the checkered flag.
We've seen BS competition try and do that before. That was at Road Atlanta though in BMW M Sim Cup last year, and they were successful. I think it was 5 seconds on that occasion as well. It is possible. Again, it's probably going to have to come down into the pit lane sequence. By the way, Sven Harzer, I believe, is starting to struggle a little bit because he's dropped back in position. The Apex Racing Team cars got through. Who's the next one? It's Daniel Pastor. What happened the last time Daniel Pastor tried to make a move on this car? Yes, he was nearly squeezed completely off the road, and I'm sure Pastor's not forgotten that.
No, we are also closing in on that time, by the way, when you can do your driver change and have fulfilled your 45-minute minimum drive time requirement. So keep an eye on the clock. As soon as we get to around an hour and 55 minutes to go, drivers may be in and out of the car as quick as you'd like. That's a look to the inside in towards the inner loop by one GTP machine, but not going to get on through with Sam Coiter in the Mercedes AMG Esports Urano camp. And Lewis, I'll come back to you very quickly for, well, the sad news that dropped earlier this week that at the end of this calendar year, as much as we've seen Urano push and push and push like Sam Coiter does now past the Porsche for VRS Coanda, 31st of December will roll around and Urano will be no more.
Yeah, which is a big shame. It's a big hole in the world of sim racing. Oh my goodness, what an absolute send from the Apex Racing team. Alejandro Sanchez, bam, straight down the inside of that VRS Commander, and now we'll have to defend for it. I'll touch back on the Urano topic in just a second. Flashing of the lights from the Commander, that was actually to say, look, I'm not going to try and pass you coming down the hill. Get back on the racing line. Let's not waste any time here, as they've now got some traffic navigating through on them. Satellite Racing will be the one to pick up that pieces. But yes, Urano, big shame. Obviously, a lot of high-profile drivers then basically being contractless at the moment going into 2024 means there's a lot of vacancies for these to spread their way into. Hopefully, some teams can pick them up because it's a team full of mega talent. It's just a big shame, like we've said before, the big comparison for us has been when Kova ceased to exist last year. Very much in that kind of category, a lot of high-profile drivers gone, although I'd say that, considering how many drivers Urano have got, it's almost a bigger fish.
And we've got pit stops underway for the GTPs, as that is BMW M Team BS competition. In slightly earlier, as we see Orion and VRS Coanda fighting for 12th in class. I think this is a recognition then, Greg, that they're not doing their driver change now. They may do it the next time down onto the pit lane.
Absolutely. You always want to have your fast guy in at the end. And, we're talking, is such tiny increments here, but you got to play a little strategy. And that was a pretty blatant punt right there. And totally took the rear wing off the back of that car. So I'm sure we're going to see some sort of a penalty coming. But yeah, sometimes if you're really bottled up in traffic as well, better to get in as soon as you hit your window, get the pit stop done, and maybe come out clear track, and then you can make up some of that time you were losing. And what a piece of driving here. That thing is basically a top fuel dragster with no grip at the back right now.
That's a pretty apt description. Yeah, the Orion Race Team Porsche gets clattered by Michael Romanidis in the second of the VRS Coanda Porsches, the number 91, as Nicholas Boy off and away from pit lane. Sharing this car for today, by the way, it is not going to be Dion Fiallo. It's actually going to be New York's own Nathan Lewis. So we'll see if the home track advantage can carry this car to the 10-second advantage that it needs, but off and away into some clean air. And that's exactly what you want to see when you finish up a pit cycle, the opportunity to put yourself into a good spot. And Greg, this was one race that when I was talking to some of the teams before, VRS Coanda knew a week ago they were trying to cut a pit stop out. Every other team, though, was not on that same page. Today, the word has mostly been that they're going to be reacting on the fly and trying to figure out what loses them the least time overall.
And that's the game you have to play now, is the 96 and Pablo Lazar coming in, the Spaniard for Obsidian Racing, doing a nice job bringing that car in. And this is probably part of, one of those reactions that we're talking about. When the leader pits, you have to really pay attention to what's going on here. And here's the one-on-one. We were talking about that. These guys, we talked about started in I think the 14th spot. We were talking about they were mired back in 12th. Guess what? That pass has them now up into at least 6th, 7th, maybe even 6th.
I think they're up to 5th actually in the 101 as well. That's a bit close with the Altus and Race Clutch cars, as well as Zach Campbell joining the fray as well. But yeah, it's been a good charge. The problem is you're a good 16, 17 seconds off of your race leader, and I don't think that Gianni Vecchio is showing any signs of stopping today after the slight frustration that we saw on Ollie Steinbratten's face at the end of the final race. Remember, it almost looked like, Lewis, he got frustrated out of turn 7 that he didn't get a good run, when I think Greg and maybe you and myself, we all thought that maybe it was Luke McEwen just playing that defense perfectly on the final lap.
Yeah, I mean, McEwen even said it in the interview. He's like, yeah, no, I kind of did back him up a little bit going through. So it's a perfectly fine tactic, and it worked out quite well. Ollie Steinbratton, I think he was more like furious in the moment. Like, I mean, if you speak to him afterwards, I'm sure he would have been like, yeah, do you know what? It was tough racing, it was hard work. But obviously, when you've done all that work to catch up and put in what was arguably the stint of the race, is what Steinbratton did, and what dragged it back into contention. Here is the 91 down onto the lane. Obviously, Michael Romanidis behind the wheel at the moment. A couple of switches behind the scenes for the 91 camp that you can touch up on a little bit, Arjuna. But they've obviously a little bit of a penalty looming over this car's shoulders, courtesy of that contact with Orion. That's a big moment though, and a bit of a scary one for Race Clutch.
That's a big save, though, to be able to bring it back under control, and hopefully the underside of the car not showing any lasting damage as a result of this. Yeah, for the number 91, Lauren Heinrich was always scheduled to not be in the car today. It was Julian Sonnen that was going to step in to replace. Charlie Collins had to be taken to the hospital earlier this morning with an allergic reaction. They were hoping to get him back into the car, but the doctors wouldn't let him leave the hospital, Greg. So Michael Romanidis gets the call up on about 60 minutes notice. The good thing is Michael competed in the number 92 a week ago, so it's not like he's unfamiliar with the car, maybe just a little less familiar with the race and the situation that he's been thrust into.
And he did a really nice job in that opening stint so far. I mean, he's moved his way up. Yeah, we've had a couple of cars pit, but he's gone from dead last in the class up into 13th. And so he's done a really nice job, kept it clean, and is coming after it. And for Charlie, that's a shame. But when you have a severe allergic reaction, it can do nasty things to your breathing and your heart. And I think if the doctors say stay put, you do it, no question about that. But we sure miss him. He had a great drive at Road Atlanta.
I think, yeah, you were really impressed with him in particular and the way that he was saving the fuel in the early stint. What did he do, like 48, 49 laps in the first hour?
47 laps in the first one. Yeah, I mean, it was impressive, and how he was doing it was what really was impressive and eye-catching.
It was really, really impressive. I agree. We're up to 22 different incidents so far. Only a handful of penalties. Hasn't been too much, fortunately. There's the Urano car, the winner a week ago. Hoffman started back in 9th position. He's already up into 6th, albeit about 9 seconds off of the lead. The thing, though, that I want to make sure everyone is on the same page about as Kawanda gets passed by the 155 Mercedes AMG Williams Esports car for 8th position. Now Oscar Pye dropping like a bit of a stone. Lewis, there were a lot of drive-through penalties for the prototypes a week ago. That was a big differentiator in helping Urano get to the front.
Yeah, I mean, look, we spoke to Urano afterwards. They've won an awful lot of races in that class, and that was arguably one they didn't win through pace or even that much through strategy. They won through being in the right place at the right time, which sometimes is how you win races. They're gifted a little bit to you, but you've got to be there to take the gift. And they certainly were, because there was just a lot of mistakes, and I think we will probably see quite a few drive-throughs, quite a few penalties looming for a few of these drivers in the GTP category, because it's so easy to mistake navigate when you're coming through the traffic. I mean, look at this from the Technical Racing by TK going up into that corner there at turn 9. So easy to overcook that and just completely clear off the GTD that you're trying to get past. So easy to get the spin. As soon as that happens, yeah, you're going to be having a little conversation with race control, and they'll probably tell you to come back down onto the lane, please.
And
I mentioned,
I'm sorry, I was just going to jump in and just say we're almost at that magic number. I think you're going to see Oscar Pai is going to bring that number 188 BRS Coanda car in immediately. They are well off the pace, and I think they're just trying to get to that driver change window.
don't forget, new memberships are 50% off, renewals are 25% off. As we work our way through Black Friday sale to November the 30th, there has never been a better time to jump onto the iRacing train, and maybe you could be a part of the 2024 IMSA Esports Global Championship. I was just going to say that you're right about the drive time, but something else that I've really just been thinking about is this is a lot darker than I thought it would be. I'm not talking about the action on track, I'm talking about the cloud cover. The weather is dynamic, and when I say dynamic, the teams have no idea what they're in for when they show up on race day. They're just kind of making educated guesses as the 92 Coanda machine, Zach Campbell behind the wheel, is onto the lane. The track condition has gotten no warmer than 35 degrees Celsius. That's about 105 odd Fahrenheit for those that use the wrong units for sports car racing. But Lewis, that's significant because I think back to the 6 hours of the Glen. You take the cloud cover away, you may see track temperatures up as high as 50 or 60 degrees Celsius. I don't think the tires are going to be such a concern. It might be a bit more of a concern if you go side by side into the inner loop. Yeah, exactly. You know, when the cloud coverage comes over, circuit cools down, means there's more grip, and you can go after it. You kind of got to react to it as it comes in. When the sun pops out through the clouds, like you say, the track temperature can rise, and that's where you start to see some real issues when it comes to the tyre wear, the tyre life. And again, you've got to keep an eye on that. Right now, they could be looking after their tyres, maybe even a little bit more, trying to make them go a little bit longer. However, as we see Gridden go into the pit lane. I was having a chat, by the way. We were seeing the XSET car there trying to get past Urano. I was having a chat with Casey Kerr when he was doing a couple of races at Road America yesterday. I was like, mate, what are you doing? Get back to practicing. And he said, to be honest, they're feeling a lot more confident for this race than they were a week ago. So that's a good sign for the XSET car that seemed to have some decent pace, but just a couple of mistakes here and there. And I think this is a crucial time to see if we are going to see driver changes, because if Casey's feeling confident, would he get Owen out? Would he put Casey in for an hour and 50 minutes? Diogo Pinto's into the lane. It means Race Clutch take the point. I think Urano stay out there as well, but magic number seemingly around 30 or so laps to see the GTPs down and into the lane. See a few questions in the chat for IMSA TV on the iRacing Esports Network. Max Verstappen is not racing today, but if you want to go and watch what he thinks about all of this action, you can head on over to twitch.tv/Team Redline, where he's watching along with the likes, I think, of Kevin Siggy. They called him Birmingham's finest, but I don't know if Luke Bennett would necessarily agree to that title. Oh, he definitely does. Oh, he would love that title, but I meant other people. Sorry, I misphrased that slightly, but yes, go and check them out. Maybe Max can join us for one of the future rounds of the championship. It could be quite exciting. Lewis, you and I, we've commentated on our fair share of a certain Max Verstappen in the sim world. He is one of the fastest in the real world. He may be one of the fastest in the sim as well. Yeah, one of the people that's over there with him, obviously Luke Crane, Actual Vision. I know one of his opinions, and it's one that I actually do agree. It's the only one I agree with, actually, Luke, is basically, if Max Verstappen were to apply himself full-time in sim racing, to be fair, even now, he would be the fastest driver in the world of sim racing. And you kind of go, well, yeah, of course, he's a Formula 1 world champion. That normally doesn't translate as well as it does for someone like Max. It is, honestly, he is as fast in sim racing as he is in a Formula 1 car. It's very bizarre and, honestly, terrifying. Look at you just trying to suck up to Max on that Team Redline watch along. Sorry, let me. I'm heading over there now. See you, lads. I'm going over there. They're lots of cars down onto pit lane. We saw the Coanda 92 battling with the Altus Cadillac as the pit stop cycle comes to a close. And that's Zach Campbell into the wall and into the wall hard. Not sure it is Zach Campbell. It's Einchan Guven, you're right. It's because Zach Campbell's waiting for an interview, and I don't think it's going to be a particularly nice one in the Mo. Well, let's not dilly-dally. Let's head straight down to pit lane where Zach Campbell's ready to chat with Greg Creamer after stepping out of the car.
Oh, Zach, absolutely, hate to bring it up at this stage. Yeah. You had worked so hard, had that car in a really nice position, and that's sometimes what happens with 2 drivers per car. Things get away. Do you think that maybe he just didn't have the tires where he needed them at that point?
No, the way the Porsche is versus all the other GTPs, you run into situations in the bus stop. I mean, you saw it with me on lap 2 of my stint where I almost had the exact same thing happen. Just unfortunate. I mean, it's just one of those things where obviously you have multiple different manufacturers, multiple different chassis involved, and so ours struggles a lot over high curbing at high speed. Stuff like turn 3 at Road Atlanta was not very fun either. So it's just one of those things that happens. I think the BMW and the Cadillac, especially from what we tried, were a lot better over it, and so we knew that area was kind of tricky. We kind of saw it a few different times, and so it's unfortunate. I mean, Ianchen's a good driver. It happens. So yeah, I guess we'll move on to the next one here.
Yeah, I remember it did catch you out just a little bit too. Is there anything you can do to address that in the future, or is it just sort of the geometry of the car just doesn't allow it?
The geometry of the car really doesn't allow it. When we're running with kind of certain when we're trying to optimize the car, you can make it good through the bus stop by trying a few different things, but then you're really compromising the rest of the track. I think you saw throughout my stint, we were really, really good through the boot compared to everybody else, and that's because we basically went from wanting the car to be good in those high speeds, which is its naturally good kind of form, went to really kind of focusing on our low speed stuff. So kind of moved on to just trying to make it and optimize it through the boot, just kind of see where that lied if it may. And so unfortunately those kind of things just happen, and yeah, we'll move on to the next one.
Well, and I think you bring up a really good point. When there's a part of the track that the car is just plain not going to work on, you make it work as best as you can, but make the car faster everywhere else. And it looked like you guys had that working pretty well. Hate to see what happened. I hear you're an Atlantan. I lived there for a few years too. Moved down there because of Road Atlanta. You're part of the Atlanta gang.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
I know there's quite the sports car racing gang down here, but yeah, proud Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket. So
there you go.
No, big fan. Yeah.
All right, Zach. Hate to see what happened. We know you'll be back strong. Thanks for taking a moment.
Yeah, no worries. Unfortunate timing, but yeah, always happy to talk to you guys. So.
All right, hang in there.
Thank you.
I know that's a bold-faced lie. Zach Campbell's not happy to talk to me ever. When I slide into his DMs, he's like, oh, this guy. But this is the thing, Greg. You got to keep your chin up, and it would be very easy for Zach to have come in and, be unhappy. I'm not saying blaming Ianchan or anything like it, but just be a little bit down. And, Zach recognizes that was something they were aware of. Things happen in motorsport. They'll go at the start of December for round 3, and what's going to be an equally bumpy Sebring International Raceway.
Well, and I think that's going to be really interesting for them at Sebring. And, I've talked about how the Cadillac works really well over the bumps, and that Porsche a little bit more just by design, a stiffer platform. And when we were watching that incident from the onboard with Leo, you could see it was on entry, and it was just that second little curve just clicked it, and it just loosened the back end up. And that's just a really rigid platform issue. And when that platform is designed like that, it's really tough to find a usable workaround.
And so as we check in with the Viras Kawanda Porsche GTD machine, which is yet to come down the pit lane, which has also dropped from running 5th at one point to good 30 seconds almost off of your race leader, and holding up now the Altus Lamborghini of Yannick Lapchin, the BMW of the Apex Racing team driven by Jimmy Antunes, but that's going to finally be, I was going to say, we're into the window where you could come into the lane, and not only is the BMW following the Porsche in, but did my eyes deceive me, Lewis, or is there damage on the front of that Porsche for Viras Kawanda?
There's also damage on the front of the 199 as well. You can see front left of the 199's got some damage, so for them and the Apex Racing team. But then also, there was definitely damage on the front end of the Porsche as well. The 89 find its way back to the race team, but again, do remind they've got a 10-second post-race time penalty.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting for them, given that Diogo Pinto now about 5 seconds further back. Fraser Williamson is slightly offset. There's the look at Nathan Lewis at New York Zone, and he's ready to chat with Greg Creamer.
Nathan, first of all, you've just got to be really pleased with what you're seeing from the team car. Nicholas Boy right now is just driving an absolutely torrid race.
Yeah, so far it's been going pretty well. Obviously, at the start we got that jump start. It was a bit unfortunate because, it was hard for Nicholas to see where it was because I guess his graphics really couldn't actually see. But that's what it is. We're just trying to drive, make up that time. And right now, Nicholas is going really well. And obviously in the pits, we're all cycle different fuel strat as I know as Redline. So right now we're just trying to take advantage of our fuel and see if we can pull ahead.
And without giving anything away necessarily, what is that fuel strategy? Are you trying to conserve, or are you committed to 2 stops and just dropping the hammer right now?
Well, so how the race is, it's a 4-stop race, and you can't really get away from 4 stops unless you really, really save. So basically, then there's also a limit on how much fuel you need to take to cover tires, because obviously with how hot the track is, we need to take tires every stop. So we're just trying to find that limit of trying to make 1 stop maybe a little bit less. And we're also doing it where, because I'm going to be doing just 1 stint in this race, so I'm doing the drive time limit. So we have to strategize where I make sure I hit the drive time.
And one of the things we've been seeing here with the dynamic weather is we see sunlight, then it gets cloudy, we see the times pick up as you would expect. But how sensitive is this track to heat? In real world, I know it is really sensitive to sunlight. Does that play out here?
I would say it's the same thing. Like the times once, like I know it's been going back and forth now when there's a lot of clouds. Like you gain 2-3 tenths instantly once the cloud cover comes in versus not going in. So yeah, I would say it swings pretty well, just like real life. So it's definitely something we have to keep an eye with.
All right, well, you guys are well placed right now, coming back from that little moment early and fighting hard. Look forward to seeing you get behind the wheel, and I'm sure Nicholas will turn that car over to you in a great spot.
Thank you, Kirk.
You're welcome. And I just wanted to say something, guys, about that heat. This track, once they repaved it, it became the one maybe downside was the super sensitivity to the heat from the sun. But here's the thing, with a car that works massive downforce and tunnel downforce a little bit with diffusers, when the track heats up, you start to lose efficiency with the downforce from the splitter and the underside of the car, because as things heat up, the gas expands, you have less oxygen, it's less dense air, and when that track surface heats up, you lose a lot of efficiency at the front of the car, and the back of the car with the wing actually then relatively picks up a little bit, so the entire balance of the car can change, and you've got to be thinking about that with these dynamic weather conditions.
Just noted as well that for GTDs, the pit stops continue to cycle through. Our Arnage competition have gotten a drive-through penalty at a rather unfortunate time. I hope they've got enough fuel to be able to roll through, as you saw them there, roll through the lane and come back around and actually get the fuel into the car. But that was for the contact with the red line 171. Somewhat expected, I think, all things considered. But I think what is maybe surprising, at least to my mind, is the fact that Gianni Vecchio leading, pulling away, and going longest on fuel? Hashtag question mark.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing is, around here, these cars, they can easily go an hour. Like, an hour is not really a problem. Obviously, it just means that they've started the car quite heavy. To be fair, you will want to start the car quite heavy, right? Because that, yeah, if you're starting the car with a full tank, even if it's a little bit slower, as we're watching the battle for second in the GTP category, but of course the BMW M Team Redlines recently got through on the CrowdStrike car, which had a shorter stop by the tune of around about 15 seconds. Than this car. We'll discuss that in a moment. But when you're starting the race, you want to start with a heavy tank, because it's fuel that you don't have to put into your car on the stop. Thus, it's time you don't have to be stationary because you've already started with it. So it makes sense to start with a pretty heavy tank and basically run it all the way out. And that might have been speeding for the Simplify car.
I mean, if they don't have a black flag, it's about as close as you can get. The 101, after starting deep in the field, did have the chance to save fuel, but I was just thinking back to the iRacing 6 Hours of the Glen, the third of our VCO Grand Slams, where we did see, I think, GTD struggle to make the top of the hour, so maybe there is some saving to hit that magic number. So, we're watching, of course, BMW M Team Redline and CrowdStrike Racing. This is what Lewis had said, where CrowdStrike had A, come in early, but B, they also didn't do a full stop. They did maybe about half a tank of fuel, maybe a little bit more than that. And it means that, yes, they're running third on track, but they are going to make their final stop amongst the earliest of the rest of the field. And I wonder if part of this, Greg, is just the worry about tires. I mentioned a couple of times. It was most present in mind for the teams running the Acura, and so maybe CrowdStrike have just been thinking about this, and they don't want to leave the tires to run too long out on track.
I think that's absolutely right. And getting back to what I was talking about with that heat change right at the surface of the track, when you start to lose that efficiency at the front, what does it do? It starts to churn up and chew up those front tires. And so you've got to be mindful of it and thinking ahead on that. What's our play going to be? And Lewis talked about you start with a full tank of fuel. That's just to make sure your options are open as much as possible once the race starts. But then you've got to adjust on the fly as it happens. And if they're seeing a lot more tire deg than they thought, they might well, decide, okay, we're going to run a little bit lighter. We're just going to stop, make sure we do that extra stop, and we're going to work hard to take care of these tires because, with this heat that we're seeing and the way that the track changes with the cloud cover, it's a challenge to stay on top of it. And the 101, what a charge, pits from the lead. Yeah, things helped, but what a drive by Sanchez.
And so a full hour made in terms of fuel. We'll see how that cycles out to the end of the race. There's the 155 Alessandro Bico driven Mercedes AMG Williams Esports car. It was the other of the Williams cars, the 153, that had its moment about 4 laps ago at the top of the S's, and I think will be done for the day. A couple of driver changes for your GTDs, not so many in the GTPs, where for the most part drivers who started are still in the car. It's Gianni Vecchio out, it's Ollie Steinbraten in, and he works his way towards the line, not expecting him to be challenged by anyone, really. It's the real question about where behind do things play out. And, well, there's strategy intrigue in GTP. Lewis, looking at these pit stop times for the GTDs, there's similar games being played as well.
Yeah, by the way, I do want to touch on the Ollie Steinbraten thing, obviously him behind the wheel, Johnny Vecchio. If you'd have asked me, to be fair, I would have said, like, a couple of months ago. If you'd have asked me a couple of weeks ago, if I had a choice between having Ollie Steinbraten or Gianni Vecchio in the car at the moment, who would I have for the longer period of the race? I probably would have said, yeah, Gianni Vecchio every single day of the week. I've got to say, that stint at Road Atlanta that Ollie Steinbraten put, it completely changed my opinion on that. I'm like, no, Gianni Vecchio's rapid, but I'm like, that stint was absolutely incredible by Ollie Steinbraten. Leave him in the car. It's like, get him in and leave him in for an hour and 40 minutes and see what he can do. Like you say, a couple of pit stops all over the place time-wise. Ollie Steinbraten and the Red Line car having, what was it, the shortest stop of the top, 6, 7? I think the next one that's had a shorter stop is the Mercedes AMG Team Williams Esports of Alessandro Bico.
Yes, no, that's a good point. He had 32-second stop there, 11 positions gained for the 155. Mercedes AMG ART, just to highlight, Greg, what an impressive charge it's been for Alejandro Sanchez. He actually had one of the quote-unquote longer pit stops in the cycle, 36 and a bit odd seconds, and he's still not that far off of those in front. We're not being realistic. I don't think the 101 is challenging for the lead, being 20 seconds off of Team Redline so far, but that's definitely something to keep in mind. Also something to keep in mind that as CrowdStrike Racing lose track of Diogo Pinto and the BMW M Team Redline car, Owen Carroll, Peter Berryman, as well as Urano's Data Group car with Dominic Hoffman behind the wheel, looking aggressive as they all battle through traffic.
That was really, really close. And yes, getting back to what Sanchez did, I was watching his times once he got in a little bit of clear track. He was running consistently 3 to 4 tenths faster than anybody, and he was eating in to that margin. Yes, it's still significant. Another huge moment for the 95 of Carroll for Exet, but managing to make it work. But he was eating into those times, and so he was definitely finding some serious speed. The other thing, when we've had a look at Ollie Steinbraten now in that car, what does he not have around him? Any traffic. Yep. He is just throwing down rocket fast laps right now. They are in a hugely solid position.
I think it's going to be a good day for Redline, and building up well for them, all things considered. Back over to that 101 Mercedes AMG Apex Racing Team car. These GTDs have no such qualms about bumping their way through the curves of that inner loop as that fight for third and fourth flies around there outside. You just look at the difference in speed, the level of downforce that the drivers have, and also the fact that, if you're a Williams car, one goes around the outside, one up the inside. You better be watching both sides of the mirrors, Lewis, and don't want to get dinged in any different ways.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a great view when we were on board with the Exet car as to how to sort of navigate traffic and how scary it can be. I say how to navigate traffic, it's a bit too scary in my book with what the GTDs have to do. We do the Michelin on board now on the number 90 that's currently running in that 6th position. Of course, the 99, the Apex Racing Team, presently holding on to 5th place. Of course, you can see that Exet and CrowdStrike battle for the podium ahead.
I think the thing that's interesting, though, is the 10-second buffer that BMW M Team BS competition need. Well, Diogo Pinto's eating into it. An hour complete in the second round of the 2023 IMSA Esports Global Championship. The Apex Racing GTP off into the grass, and we're building to the run to the checkered flag here on IMSA TV on the iRacing Esports Network. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back from Watkins.
All the hype is leading to this. Porsche, BMW, Acura, Cadillac in the reborn GTP category. It's a new era, a new breed of sports car racing. Electrified speed, electrified drama. Win the weekend, presented by Michelin. Watch episodes now on YouTube.
Welcome to one of the greatest spectacles in motorsport.
And all these cars look amazing. Are you ready? America's best sports car drivers and the best from around the world. Let's go and get this 24-hour classic started.
Green flag, green flag.
That was awesome.
Sebring International Raceway, the birthplace of American endurance racing.
Hashtag respect the books, putting it all on the line. Sebring is such a big race. You want it on your resume.
100-minute sprint that is the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach. There is always a dramatic end to this race.
I love IMSA racing. I love colonies. Welcome to the Monterey Peninsula in California. The 11 corners of WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca.
This is the Motor City. It's one of the most important, prestigious races in the WeatherTech Championship. It's going to be a good old-fashioned street fight here in Detroit.
One of the classic race courses in the world. 11 corners, 3.4 miles, 6 hours on the clock. Starts right now.
North of the border in Canada.
Wild action. We talk about this racetrack, total commitment.
High cornering speeds, Cal, high closing speeds. The drivers will tell you it makes you kind of hold your breath.
Road racing is at the very heart of this area of Wisconsin.
It's a driver and fan favorite. What a day we have had in Road America.
Virginia International Raceway.
The fight continues at a track the late Paul Newman called Heaven on Earth.
It is the Michelin GT Challenge.
Any event at Indy is going to be a big one. So special.
Fantastic stuff.
Motul Petit Le Mans. It is a colossal scene on the front straight. It's championship day.
What an awesome finish.
Coverage of the 2023 IMSA Esports Global Championship is brought to you by Michelin, the official tire of IMSA. Looking for a performance upgrade? If a superior all-season performance that stands out from the crowd is your goal, the Michelin Pilot Sport All-Season 4 can take you to the next level. Visit your local tire dealer for details on these new Michelin products. And by IMSA Esports, a company within the NASCAR family and the sanctioning body of the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, the premier sports car racing series in North America. For more information on the series, schedules, and to purchase tickets for your next event, visit IMSA.com today. It's our Junior Kangi party. It's Lewis McLean and Greg Creamer here on the IMSA TV channels on the iRacing Esports Network as we work our way towards the final 90 minutes of the second round in 2023. Lewis, it's been a bit more hectic, I think, of an opener than I think anyone expected. 46 drivers started, and attrition has played its part. Just 36 are still left there running on the track, and it's still Nicholas Boy that leads in the BMW M Team BS Plus competition machine.
Yeah, we've had our fair share of drama right from the off. You know, the GTPs were pretty clean through the first corner or so. It was the GTDs where all the drama really was. Nicholas Boy's been pretty much perfect, with the exception of one very specific part of the race, and that was on the race start. Whether you believe the graphics, whatever it was, I can't remember what the excuse was. I'm not too sure on that one. But alas, it was a jump start for Nicholas Boy. Big shame for the BMW M Team BS competition, but they definitely have the speed to pull away from the lead. See if Redline have got the same kind of deal, because I think it's a solid yes.
I think right now in Redline's case in this 170, there's no question about the fact that they are the fastest car in class. By the way, CrowdStrike's number 3. We talked about them having an early pit stop. They come in once again, and I would suspect that it's probably to do a driver change, although don't quote me on that one. as up towards the S's, it's the Sam Michaels driven number 4, so the second of the CrowdStrike machines in line that's hunting down Dominic Hoffman. The race winners from a week ago that, Greg, we've talked about it plenty. A disappointing qualifying performance once again has put them somewhat on the back foot. The highest that they've run so far today is up in that 5th position.
It's been a really tough one for them, as we talked about here, and the fact that they're up in the top 5 does give a little bit of credit to what they've been dealing with here, and they had such a clean race. Everybody else had their little issues, and they put together such a clean race at Road Atlanta, but they started a little bit farther up the order as well, and that's just difficult because everybody's so close in these classes.
Especially with these Michelin tires, which are taking a real beating around this track. Greg mentioned the high loads, seeing the cloud cover seemingly disappearing as well, and so keep your mind on the fact that potentially the track temperatures might rise as a result of that, but at least for Urano in their new white and red livery, it makes it a little bit easier to pick them out from the much darker gray, black and reds that we've got plenty of over the course of the sim racing universe. Diogo Pinto is really putting the pressure on, I must say. 2.4 seconds, the margin between the top 2, and a 10-second post-race penalty. It's not something that's going to be applied in the race itself. So that's one of the distinctions, Lewis, that we've got to keep reminding people. There's +10 asterisks next to the side of the 89.
Yeah, we'll obviously update you a few times throughout the race. Mostly it's so that we're actually remembering it, because again, we're idiots in the commentary booth, and so yeah, we must keep reminding ourselves, and it does help that we remind you at home, of course. And at the moment, the WM Team Redline, of course, they had their fair share of penalties a week ago at Road Atlanta, which essentially cost them the victory. I'm pretty sure that they would love to be gifted a victory courtesy of another team's penalties, but that said, it'd be more sweeter if they can get through and take over the position with their own hands. This is the battle at the moment for 5th position in the GTD class. Of course, the unbelievable opening stint that we saw in the hands of Alejandro Sanchez put him inside the top 5 after qualifying in 14th. He's starting to feel a little bit of pressure from what is now. It is the lone Mercedes-AMG Team Williams Esports car, because the other one's definitely out, isn't it?
Oh no, that car is about as dead as you can get, unfortunately. You know that S's section that we're coming up to right now, Lewis. You know what you really don't want to do? Hit the wall up here. Yes. So Daniel Pastro unfortunately got tagged. I think it was by the Texaco Racing by TK machine up into the initial rise of the crest, and yeah, dead as a dodo, unfortunately, for Daniel Pastro, who was feeling a little under the weather. So. Probably not a great way to spend a Sunday, as that's a CrowdStrike. See ya, and still smoke going, but I don't see a car.
That's impressive.
It's a good save, Greg.
That was a massively great save. Yeah, with the angle, you'd have thought right to that outside wall, as we so often see there, and they gathered it up and were able to hang on to it and keep it on track. So that was really impressive, as is this battle for 5th, with Sanchez being really hounded now by Alessandro Bico. And if you remember, guys, just a few laps ago, one of the prototypes made sort of a surprise move on Bico down into the laces of the boot, and his track awareness impressed me huge. You could literally almost see him just open that wheel up a little bit, give enough room for that prototype so that they both survived at the exit, and that's why he's right behind Alejandro Sanchez right now, and trying to get into that top 5. It was a great piece of driving.
I just wonder, what would you do if you combine Alejandro Sanchez and Alessandro Bico? What sort of super hybrid mega driver could you create amongst the two of them? I mean, Lewis, you've had your fair share of name slip-ups. Was it Manuel Sorica that's the most common?
Yeah, there was also Godinho. I turned him into Maxence Godinho. I turned him into a footballer. Nice. I remember that one. No, we've had a couple. At least I haven't messed up your name on broadcast. Why don't say it? Because there's normally a couple of words that follow it, and I don't really want to go into that, as we see Urano and such working their way through traffic on the top of the screen, getting past their teammates. Speaking of people that have had good awareness, Alexi Ness have had a similar kind of thing to what you were talking about there, Greg, where kind of going into a corner, seeing a GTP coming straight on the inside and actually backed out of it really, really well. It's easier said than done.
Well, it is. I mean, you're looking forward. Your eyes up through the corner. At a certain point, you kind of you have to get your eyes off the mirrors, because you need to be looking up the road a little bit. But that sort of sixth sense that you knew the guy was close. You could, you know, kind of look in your mirror, say he's coming, and you just kind of sense it sometimes. Just open the wheel, let him through, reduce your speed just a titch so that you can maintain that outside run, and everybody survives at the exit. And that's what the great ones can really do.
What we are kind of seeing in terms of some of these drivers moving on forward, the Mercedes car is not maybe great in qualifying, but they're really starting to pick up the pace in this race itself. Lewis mentioned Nessov, he's past Tristan Iglesias in that Simu-5 Porsche, the 114. These drivers actually are closing slightly on them just up the road as well, so plenty just to keep in mind as we see some of the teams just continuing to filter their way on through with this traffic. The pit stop window won't open for probably another 10 laps or so, and then it will be the GTPs to come in first, where at least for the time being the gaps are holding relatively steady. Let's run our way then to some hour one highlights of the second round of the 2023 IMSA Esports Global Championship at the Watkins Glen International Raceway. The green flag would drop, and well, ultimately Barney did have to wave it for quite a while, but it was all just waiting in this case, I think, for your GTDs to come around and to see the start. So plenty of chaos on the starts at Road Atlanta. A little bit more coordinated for the most part, but you can see some drivers trying to filter their way to the inside. The Apex Racing team was one of them, and down the hill into the 90, it was the virtual coach by GG machine looking a bit aggressive down the inside of the Michelin Pure Sims car. Concertina effect, chain reaction caused Team 75 back onto the track and ended up tangling with Doras. Up the hill we would go through the yeses. Yes, they were almost 3 wide behind, but no, they didn't crash. They were able to get through safely, all as BS Turner was going to lose out after a bit of contact with Delta Sport. That would see them result in a couple of penalties. We'll take a look at the highlights in a few moments' time as well, but what a chaotic opening hour it has been. And I've just looked at the left side of the screen. Greg, the gap between the 89 and the 71 at the front of the GTP class is closing once more. It's now down to almost 2 seconds.
Yeah, Diego Pinto is really doing a nice job on a clear track. You know, these guys at the front have been consistently the fastest, as you would expect, in that top group, and they had been running within about a half a tenth of a second here consistently here. And take a look at what happened here. Big move, a big lunge. You can see the lights flashing. Got in way too hot, caught that curve, locked it up, and still could not save it, right into the barriers. And that was a big hit for the number 18 of Nathan Olson for Wave Italy Racing.
Not the only car that's had a big wallop into that wall. I just noticed as well that Sven Haase in the virtual coach GG by Grid & Go Esports Ferrari had a similar sort of an incident there. Also is done with the race, and we are seeing a high level of attrition, higher than what we saw at Road Atlanta, and that's something just to keep in mind, Lewis, as these drivers work their way through the end of this race. All they've got to do realistically is stay out of trouble, and good points are up for grabs.
What was it that I put in my in the Michelin keys to the race? I think that the last one was attack the track, and I meant that in you know, in a sense of like go after the lap time and all that kind of stuff. I did not mean clobber every curb you possibly could and ignore track limits. And hot damn, the drivers have been going after it today. Like I said, you know, well, the high talking points we've had is that, you know, is it the easiest track on the calendar? Realistically, it kind of is. With that comes the complacency. With the complacency comes the issues that we have seen. Drivers do not respect the track, and the track around here bites harder than... It's kind of those ones that you kind of don't really think about. Whilst it's the easiest track, it is the one that bites the hardest, because if you have a crash around here, you're going so fast, and yeah, when you get the runoff going up towards the inner loop, that runoff's tarmac. Tarmac, you don't lose speed when you go over it. You just go straight into the barrier. How many GTPs have we seen off there now? I think it's like 5? 4 or 5?
Yeah, let's not count that. What I am counting is track temperature. You know how I mentioned earlier it was, what, 35 degrees Celsius, which is in the incorrect units about 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, I've just had another check. The cloud cover has dissipated. Greg, it's up to 47 degrees Celsius to 115 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, and that's absolutely scorching, and that really gets down to what I was talking about. It radiates so much heat right off of the track, just a few inches off the ground. It really messes up the aero on the car. Plus, it just obviously that the track's hotter, the tires don't work as well. It just affects so much. But right down at the track surface, the aero efficiency goes away. And Pico got a really, really nice run. He just could not get up onto the back there of Sanchez and make that move. And one of the things, folks, when we had that wider shot coming in as we watch him come into the bus stop, off to the right, there's a blue marshalling hut. And they had released in the driver's briefing that if you don't have overlap by that hut and then you throw it down in there and there's contact, you're likely going to get a penalty. So I think everybody being a little bit circumspect for the most part heading in there. And the last thing, guys, when we saw that prototype go off, the number 18, right before that happened, he was flashing his lights. It's sometimes doing stuff like that distracts you just that half a second and miss your braking point.
Yeah, the act of flashing the lights is usually used to try and distract other people, but your insistence on trying to flash them can sometimes distract yourself. It's quite funny, actually. In the real world, I guess you actually have to consider the fact that if you flash too much, eventually your bulbs may go or something. In the sim, we don't have those sort of concerns, and I remember in 2020, he was doing a race with a factory driver for one of the manufacturers, and he had, Greg, mapped the button which he used to flash his lights to the button that he used to talk to us on the radio. And so every time he was going around the lap and trying to talk to us, which was a lot because it's that track in the French countryside where you spend a lot of time just full throttle doing nothing. So every time he was talking to us, drivers around him thought that he was really irritated with them.
That's hilarious. And it makes total sense here. And again, watch Pico. He gets this really, really nice run. And he's thinking about it. Now he's really catching that draft. There's that hut. He knew it wasn't going to be there. He backs off to get a little bit more air. Well, I think so. I think there's a couple of things happening here with that. One, I think he's backing off a little bit to get some air on the nose so that it points into the bus stop. And two, he may just be doing a little bit of fuel save. But the thing that I'm loving here, watch Sanchez's eyes. Every time he comes out of a corner, watch his eyes. It checks all three mirrors back to turn in, looking up the road, up here into the toe of the boot where you can chuck it in because you get banking and you can really throw it in there a bit. But he exits the turn. Look at that. Eye shift. Look, look, look. Knowing exactly where Pico is and doing that when the prototypes are coming through. That's how you can do what Pico did and leave that little bit of room. You've got to have that track awareness.
And maybe something that you see as well is the eyes flicking down to what in iRacing we call the F3 black box, the relative. So you can see where drivers are on track 5 seconds behind, 10 seconds, etc., as the Nicholas Boy-powered BMW MTBS competition car comes in, and Nathan Lewis jumps in, which implies it's going to be 45 minutes, and Nicholas Boy's going to get back in. So just keep your eye on that. But yeah, when it comes back to these drivers, they are just keeping their eye on everything and rolling their way back towards the line. 45 minutes, the minimum drive time. So that means if Nathan Lewis, I'm trying to work backwards here, Lewis, never trust the commentator's math, but does that mean Nicholas Boy's going to get in for a 30-minute stint at the end of the race?
I mean, theoretically, he could do. Obviously, that would be in 45 minutes' time. I will say, the first stint they did was 38 minutes, so the second stint was actually quite a bit longer as we see Owen Carroll roll down onto the lane. I mean, Nicholas Boy's been looking really fast so for this round. Reason why he got the pole position and why they've been such a strong team. I do kind of worry, though, if they're almost, because of that 10-second penalty, as to whether they're actually thinking too much about the gap between them and BMW Team Redline, and maybe it's about kind of keeping them on the podium. But of course, at this point, they can only go as fast as they can, and they should start worrying about that 10-second time penalty right now. They could put Boy back in for the final stint. I would almost kind of maybe advise against it. Split the race in half, and so maybe it is just it's half and half of the race. Who knows? Either way, these two are catching up the order to those ahead, because I think the Urano car is starting to feel the pressure, as is Simufy, who's directly ahead of them.
Simufy did have a bit more fuel put into that car, so maybe they're just a little bit heavier. But again, this was also maybe race pace. It's Ferrari at the front pulling away, a Porsche in second that's dropping back into the clutches of a swarm of Mercedes, who just about hold on as the CrowdStrike Acura looks around the outside. That was the number 3, I do believe, which has Marcus Hamilton. That's jumped in for the very first time this season, just working their way on through. An hour and 16 minutes to go. Of course, these GTT machines can go as long as an hour on fuel. The GTP is closer to 40-45 minutes. We did see Owen Carroll jumping in to the pit lane. He's gotten out of the car and handed over to Casey Kerwin. And Casey will have done plenty of laps at Watkins Glen, but Greg, it would be around the what I call oval configuration. The version that NASCAR comes here to race in once a year and always puts on a show, but it is not too dissimilar from the extended layout that we run today.
Yeah, not too dissimilar. Obviously, you just missed the boot, but every other part of the track is very much the same. And oh, wow, that was a big break right there for the 101 of Sanchez as Pico in the Team Williams Esports Mercedes got parked by one of the prototypes coming through into the inner loop. But this is the game of chess is on, guys. I know I keep going back to it, but when these prototypes come through, and it is just stunning how much they're the speed that they have to wield their way through. And Pico got caught out. But that last pass, that sort of hung up Tristan Iglesias a little bit in the Simify Esports Porsche. And now he's got Sanchez really on him at this stage. And, the one thing we were talking about, that they didn't qualify well in the Mercedes, but they're racing well. It's sort of the same scenario for the Cadillac in GTP. The Mercedes, the GT3 car, is renowned for its ability to maintain platform stiffness through fast stuff and change direction while absorbing curbs. And right now, Sanchez Pico are doing everything they can to take advantage of that.
They've got the Urano machine sending it up the inside and actually clambering onto the curb, and I think that was because indeed it's coming down to pit lane. And so I think we're going to see Dominic Hoffman out, and potentially it could be the second driver in at this point in the race, although you never know. Urano's two drivers both equally quick, but it might be the first time this season we see Danny Lorenzo into the car. That was a reactionary move to the inside by Simify, just covering the inside up through turn 2, forcing the GTP with its extra downforce to go the long way around. And I mentioned the relative box briefly, Lewis. The reason why it's so important is you can't be thinking about the next corner. You need to be thinking 2, 3, 4 corners ahead. Okay, where are the cars behind? How am I going to let them through properly? Because there are certain corners where you can gain some time if done right. There are certain corners where you can lose a whole bunch of ground.
Yeah, it's actually kind of one of those ones that I actually don't, I know less of from a GTD perspective of like looking at the relative and kind of like seeing when those GTPs are catching. Because obviously you can see where they are and how many seconds roughly behind you they are relative on the circuit. I know that from a GTP perspective you need to use it because you can work out, they're 3 seconds ahead, that means I'm going to catch them at this point, I'm going to catch them at this point. So obviously it works in reverse. But it's mostly for me, when I was in the racing and stuff, is that you would look at the relative and seeing how quickly it was ticking down was more of an obvious thing as to whether you were going to need to defend or not, right? If it's ticking down fairly quickly, that means, yeah, you're going to have to defend to the next corner. If it's not really ticking down at all, then no, you don't. I know you'd probably say, yes, but if you check the mirrors, I get the mirrors can be a little bit distorted. They can be a little bit odd as we see the CrowdStrike car come back onto pit lane. Sam Michael's behind the wheel at the moment of that car. But the mirror could distort things. The relative never lies, apart from when it does. We're not going to talk about that.
Yeah, you got to also understand what the relative is kind of saying in terms of the margin. Is it going to be a move into the 90? It is. They're going to lean on one another. Iglesias gets forced out wide, but it is the 101 that has now climbed up a remarkable 10 positions. After qualifying down in 14th, it's in 4th, but the real problem, the crux of the issue is, Greg, they are 20 seconds off the back of your race leader as Simify under continued fire.
Yeah, they are, and I'll tell you, when he got forced wide down there, he lost all of his momentum climbing that hill, and as you talked about, that's 100 feet, and it goes on a ways, and he was a sitting duck. You can see went way to the inside, just hoping to be able to protect, and Pico having none of that and has gone through. So for Tristan Iglesias, just a really nice, clean move by Alejandro Sanchez, and it just got Tristan offline a little bit, and it ended up being a double loss of position. But Tristan fought it as long as he really could have.
I think it's interesting just to note as well the fact that with this pit stop cycle coming to a close for some of those GTP cars, just how wide the fuel window has risen once more. We are seeing the fact that 2 hours and 40 minutes can be divvied up into so many different ways, and now the Porsche, which took on more fuel, might be a little bit heavier at this point in the run, starts to lose out some ground as the BMW M Team redline, the 71 into the pit lane after Diego Pintos had a pretty sterling opening hour and a half of this race. My assumption would be that Chris Lullum, silly Lolly himself, will get into that car. We're about to find out, Lewis.
Yeah, I actually don't know. I've just checked out on the over on the team red line side of things. He's not. I don't think he's ready in the rig. Although maybe it's not on that camera. I don't know. Just have a little investigation over on that side. But we know that Lullum's rapid, and so I would expect him to do half the race. But we'll have to wait and see. On that one, obviously, it's been a solid stint from the 71. Once again, they went 47 minutes from the first stint. They've now put in an hour and a half into the race, so this stint's slightly shorter than the first. But that's not actually too much of a surprise. Are they the team to beat at the moment in the GTP category? They certainly look like the team to beat in the GTD category. We could be looking at 2 team redline victories here this afternoon, and with an hour and 10 minutes left to go, they do look like they're relatively in control of their respective classes, most certainly in the GTD category.
It's only been one instance, right, Lewis, correct me if I'm wrong, where one team has swept both classes in the IMSA Esports Global Championship. That would be Daytona at the end of last year with the Apex Racing team. We'll have to confirm that, but let's take a look at the replay of some, well, I'm going to guess, some drama with some of the curbs. Greg, you can see how raised they are. Oh, goodness.
Yeah, and you saw, wow, that was a huge hit. And you can see the speed in there is so extraordinary. And if you just get it a little wrong on that first, the curb on the right, and then you know, it'll either spit you right there or it launches you a little bit wider onto that second curb on the left. That'll just catch and pitch. That was violent, and it all started just a little bit too aggressive. That's I think, Lewis, that was attacking the track a bit much.
Oh yeah, but we've seen that. See, this is the whole thing of like, this is where part of my concern comes from. Because obviously, the next time we go racing, which is obviously in a few weeks' time, we're going racing at Sebring, which is not exactly the most compliant track when it comes to suspension travel. I am concerned if we're having so many cars get detonated around here on that bit of track as to how things are going to be in Sebring. Obviously, at Sebring, you are going to loosen things up. You're going to try and make it, you know, take the bumps, obviously. And it's more of a feature zone. We've seen so many though take that and take it awkwardly. It seems like it's a bit of a lottery that they're taking it, and you're just hoping that for 2 hours and 40 minutes you're taking it, and every single time it's fine. It only takes one time for it not to be though, and you are out of the race.
I'll play a bit of devil's advocate, as the 178, by the way, has a drive-through penalty. Part of the reason why, Greg, we are seeing the maybe lottery that Lewis mentions is how often in the real world do you see the cars basically four-wheeling it over the inside? Look how close, looking at the back of Dinez's camera right now, they are almost touching the wall on entry. That's how aggressive and how early they're turning into the corner.
Yeah, and you don't see a lot of that in the real world. You know, the GTD cars will be a lot more aggressive, but it's just the platform's so stiff. And I think what these guys are, you know, sort of counting on is, yes, I'm going to get the rebound when I hit those curbs going into the inner loop, and they're hoping that the downforce will just drive it right back down onto the track. But you cannot forget, even as good a tire as a Michelin is, those contact patches, there's only 4 of them, and they're pretty small. And if they lose contact long enough, aero's not going to help you. You're going for a ride. And I think you're right. I think for some of these guys, every time in there, it's a little bit of the dice roll.
I am glad I'm not in a GTP car, that's for sure, although I'm also glad I'm not in a GTD with the GTPs trying to send it up the inside. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It's the race clutch 15 after being tagged before they even got to the line at the start of round number 1. That leads us with the pit stop window still a little bit open for them. They're on to the 28th lap of the cycle after a full service 49-second stop in the first pit stop window of the race. Expectations would be Peter Zuber's going to jump out and hand it over to his teammate Balish Reminick in those race clutch colors. But of course, the margin back to Altus Esports has grown just by virtue of the fact that the race control drive-through penalty has put the charge for the 43 down somewhat. It has been quieter, all things considered, Lewis, for race control. We had almost 100 incidents over the course of round 1. About an hour to go. We're only up to 28 so far.
Yeah, got to remember most of those. To be fair, most of the incidents back in Red Atlanta and the stuff from race control was actually notes to drivers about warnings for track limit excursions because they were keeping an eye on it at certain points. That obviously would have affected quite a lot of the tally. But also around there was an awful lot of class-to-class, different kind of battles, class to class, and obviously incidents going through traffic. That's been less of a problem here. It was a problem early on, but it's been less of a problem here. We are getting a note that, and I was actually going to wonder if this was actually in the rules as to whether they could do it or not, well, never mind, we'll back out of that one, because I was going to talk about the 10-second time penalty, because BS Competition will find themselves a bit further down the order.
Yeah, the 10 seconds, again, just a reminder, has got to be added as a post-race time penalty.
Yeah.
It cannot be served during the race itself.
So, yeah.
And so that's where you've got to just add 10 seconds to where they sit relative to the BMW M Team red line. Although having said that, with the way the cycle of strategy is played on out, Nathan Lewis with a longer pit stop, 49.7 seconds compared to the 39 seconds for Chris Slalom. I think that's maybe where the confusion has come from. So what we have here, Greg, is a bit of a difference between the two teams right now, and one car going with a shorter stop now, a longer stop maybe in the final sequence, as opposed to what the BS Competition team are doing here now.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I really think that Race Clutch got that right. You know, in this type of a scenario, go long early and do that long stop, really load the car up and get out there and go, because it opens your opportunities and options up later in the race. If you go short early, you're locked in to absolute outside windows that you can't adjust on the fly. And if you've gone a little bit longer, you know, early on, now you've got some room to play with in terms of, all right, did we just get packed up, you know, in a big group? I've talked about that, where you duck into the pits, you know, once you're in a window, get that done, come back out with clear track. And I mean, look what, you know, Zuba's been able to do here. He has, you know, just been storming away and opening up some serious margins here. And since you mentioned it, Lewis, I've got to get my take in on the track limits thing.
Nice.
In the real world, I am a massive track limits. The track is marked. You stay in those markings, because even though it's a paved runoff like down at 1 and at the exit of 9 here, when you use up a lot of that runoff, you are lessening the amount of runoff you have before you hit something. And the track is marked, you should follow it. Now, since that isn't such an issue here in sim racing, I will abide by Mario Andretti's take on that when he said, if you don't want me to race on it, don't pave it.
I mean, look, I'll say, you know, last week when you said that you believed in the commentators' curse, I thought I wasn't going to like you. I like you. I completely agree. You know, if you know, for me, track limits, I'm pretty kind of strict and all that kind of stuff. But that said, like I say, if the rules are the rules and they're saying you can use them, well, you'd be silly not to. You've got to take it all the way up. You want to win at the end of the day. There's no point in taking the high road and saying I'm going to stick within the track limits because that's what they should be, and then finishing 45 seconds down the road because, well, you decided to take the high road and it's not worked. A few drivers in GTP then into the pit lane. IMSA Esports down onto the lane, as is Race Clutch. Peter Zuber is going to hand out to Balázs Remények. Eduardo Lea will also be out of the kart, meaning that BMW M Team Red Line will take over the race lead, not even needing the BS Competition 10 seconds time penalty.
And look at that running order with the pit stop cycle going to be complete. Once Altus and Race Clutch drop, BMW M Team Red Line, and then eNASCAR fans around the world are going wild. Casey Kerwin's up in second in that exit number 95, and he said he was feeling confident, Greg. That's a good thing, but in a team race, you're always relying, especially if you're the second driver in the car, on how your teammate sets you up. Casey Kerwin is 6 seconds off the lead right now, and an opportunity to prove just how quick he can go, not just turning left, but right as well.
Absolutely, and you know, the driver who started in that car, Owen Carroll, you know, talking about attacking the track, Lewis, he was absolutely brilliant with traffic, threading the needle, that outside pass around the outside of the last corner, right up against the wall, then coming back through. I watched him do that a few times around here, and it was that kind of driving, attacking the track, attacking the competitors, but doing it cleanly, that has now given Casey an opportunity to be in this position and set sail. And I really think this Cadillac is working well here on this track. It really eats and absorbs those curves beautifully. And I'll tell you, Carl did an absolutely stellar job in his stint.
Let's listen in with Casey Kerwin. Let's ride around in upstate New York and grab some iRacing full throttle with this Cadillac V-Series R. Less than an hour to go in the 2023 IMSA Esports Global Championship second round at Watkins Glen, and it's still Chris Lollam and the BMW M Team Redline that leads. It's also Team Redline that leads in the GTDs as they search to become just the second team to be able to grab victories in both classes in a single race. Arjuna Kankipati alongside with Lewis McLeod and Greg Creamer for all of this action, and Lewis, those margins at the front starting to look increasingly unsurpassable as we work to the closing stages of this race, but across both classes there are still pit stops left to go.
Do you remember in the GTD category just a week ago we were racing at Road Atlanta? We see the Pure Sims coming into the pit lane. They've got a penalty as well. They stop and hold for 10 seconds for some of their transgressions through the race. Team Redline, the 170, of course, they were able to close down what was a 5-second gap plus overtaking one of the Apex Racing Team drivers last week. So that being an 8-second advantage does not necessarily mean that it's going to remain that until the checkered flag. 1 hour left to go, and the gap has actually remained the same for half an hour.
Altus just pushed Arnage wide, but again, Greg, how did we get out of that with the cars in one piece?
You tell me. I watched that and I just swallowed hard. That was absolutely insane. But they made it work. And guys, I just want to call attention to something. Very quietly, but very efficiently, look who's sitting third overall. Our overall winners from race 1. That number 90 BMW, the Urano Esports Data Group, and not that far off here when you look back at things. 9 seconds off of the lead right now, but as you said, just a little under an hour left to go. An awful lot can happen.
Yeah, let's give you a bit of a rundown through this GTP class with the final pit stop just on the horizon. Redline in that 71, about 6 seconds clear of Casey Kerwin in the exit number 95. Then Urano 4 or so seconds further back in third and being hunted down by Sasha Gorla in the CrowdStrike Racing number 4, of course powered with the drivers from Mivano Sim Racing. It's fifth for the BMW M Team BS Plus competition, and again, let's not forget 10 seconds to be added to their race time at the end of this race. They'll drop behind likely the likes of the Apex Racing Team, Race Clutch, CrowdStrike Racing, Satellite Racing, and the 91 VRS Coanda car that make up the rest of the top 10. And of course, Oscar Mangan hunting down Michael Romanidis in the fight to claw their way into the top 10. GTDs, it's Redline and Steinbratton, a full 8 seconds clear of Jordan Caruso, who's been in that car since the start and will have to jump out at some point to hand over to his teammate Urano, Apex, and Williams. The trio of Mercedes AMG customer cars in third, fourth, and fifth positions, with some separation to those top 2 machines, with Simufy, BS Plus Turner, Mercedes, Urano, Altus, and the Apex Racing Team through the rest of the top 10. There is your 2023, excuse me, Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup champion. The years all flow together at some point, Lewis, but Greg, it's quite fitting to see the champion in a Porsche GT3 machine. And I mentioned it at the start, they didn't get very far in our opening race of the season. They are looking to just build some points and some momentum.
Yeah, I mean, it's really been just a superb race for them from that long-awaited green flag that we showed you earlier. They've just driven extremely well. Both drivers have really hustled that car, did an absolutely superb job on it. And, Jordan Caruso has just been spectacular. Dino Lombardi, we're just really impressed with what they've been able to do here. And it's great to see it because they need those points. That's what we're talking about. And, speaking of points, getting back to the Urano team, winning the first round, starting 9th, and things looking maybe a little bleak. Even if they don't win this, you think about the only car right up in that lead group right now that's got great points coming in is that 71 M Team Redline entry. So they're doing themselves a lot of good. Whoa, that was a really aggressive return to the track from Ormanatis.
Yeah, I was just about to touch on this.
Has lost the Cadillac for XZ Racing, and I'm going to guess, Lewis, this was in the bus stop.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was just taking a look around the circuit with a couple of cars on my own little feed, and I saw a certain Casey Kerwin basically stationary, has clearly gone and taken too much of the curb on the right-hand side and has gone straight into the barrier head first. It's broken a lot of the suspension. We'll take a little bit of a look at it. There's a lot of the curb, and you see it just spinning all the way around and then head first into the barrier.
Ka-chow.
Well, that's terrible. Well done. Someone had to do it.
You can see air clearly underneath that car. It hit so hard.
And as a result of that, Danny Lorenzo in the Urano Esports car let Sasha Gorla through. Oh, what a big one. And that's going to be heartbreaking for Casey, who felt confident. The roulette of the curb unfortunately caught him out, Greg.
Yeah, it did. As I said, he hit it. You could see that car catch some serious air. The minute it hit the ground, it just pivoted. And you've just got to be really careful with that, particularly in a car that isn't particularly great over the curbs. And, watching the number 4 here, look what Sasha Gorley's doing here. He's using the curb, but he's not all over it. He's nipping it here and there. This is a really stiffly sprung car, too. He's driving it the way you need to drive it through the bus stop because it's going to be absolutely mega everywhere else on this track.
It's a little bit heartbreaking just to see what happened to Casey. But this number 4 car started down in 10th position and slowly has been working its way on forward with the pairing that they have. We talked to Casey slightly earlier in the season. Let's talk with him again, and he's chatting with Greg Creamer.
Yeah, Casey, I just hate to see what happened there. He got behind the wheel, were absolutely flying out there, and then just really clipped that entry curve into the bus stop. Just get the angle wrong turning in, or had you been attacking at that angle all day?
Yeah, I just got it wrong. We had such good pace. That was kind of just a mental thing there. I was pushing it and being real aggressive to the inside wall, and last lap I'd almost grazed it, and kind of in my head I was like, we have a good gap, let's try and take it easy, and that's really what hurt me there. So yeah, I don't know, just a stupid mistake. We had so much pace, I just thought I was getting a little too close for comfort, so I tried to take it easy, and then that was actually worse. I just should have been a bit more confident in how I was driving, and unfortunately I second-guessed myself, and when you second-guess yourself, you crash. So, yeah, sucks. Owen did an amazing job. The first stint to go from 10th to where we were in net P2 there, and should have at least had a P2 there. So we had the pace. I'm glad I had the pace. Just, yeah, I got to stop second-guessing myself in these situations and just try and drive a bit more natural.
Well, you're still, give yourself a little break. You're still a little bit new, right, to this road racing thing. And, you know, looking at the times, you indeed had the pace. You were literally flying out there and really giving it a run. And, you know, so obviously you're frustrated. I know you're gutted for the team. But tick this one off as one of those learning moments, right? You know, because this is a little bit different dynamic dealing with massive aero and everything. But your pace was there, Casey.
Yeah, obviously, you know, having fun's the main thing, and if we can be competitive, that's a bonus. And obviously, the 10 laps or whatever I just got to drive there was a lot of fun. Yeah, just unfortunately made a big mistake. So yeah, it's frustrating, and now we have to wait about like a month to try again. But yeah, it's just it sucks just knowing that it's going to be so hard to have pace to have a shot at, you know, like a podium or second like we did today, and yeah, just throw it away hurts. But yeah, I mean, it's just wanted to kind of see what I could do on a high-level road series, and at least have the pace. Just gotta minimize the mistakes and not second-guess myself so much. I think, yeah, well, I think I just, don't quite give myself enough confidence that I feel like I should, and then I screw myself up because of it. So we'll work on that.
Well, that's, as I said, that's all part of making that adjustment to this type of car. So, and I'm glad to see you're smiling. I know it's maybe a little bit through some gritted teeth, but your speed's there. Can't wait to see what you do when we go to Sebring and, you know, finish this season up. You guys are a great team, and can't wait to see it all come to good for you.
Yep, hopefully better. No mistakes at Sebring. I said no mistakes after last week. Didn't work this week. Third time's the charm at Sebring, hopefully.
There you go. Third time's the charm, and we're going to hold you to it. It'll be a lot of fun. So hang in there, and we'll see you at Sebring. And I think we just saw our leader in GT Daytona in the pits, didn't we?
Yeah, the pit lane becoming a very, very busy place once again for the drivers. You could hear Casey there trying to keep lighthearted, but again,
he's a good sport though.
He's being as good a sport as he can, but this is where, Lewis, we know Casey is very, very fast. Casey's learning, though, that at this level of road racing, these guys do it all the time. They're so experienced at doing these stints hours and hours on end, and Casey's now trying to find that same level of consistency that separates the good from the great.
Yeah, like I said, we've seen Casey in road course racing plenty of times, and we know he's rapid in it, but that's kind of like, you know, doing your official races, you know, and racing, you know, with your 8-9K high-rated drivers and stuff. That's one thing. When you're doing it in a league, in a series, in something like this, racing in an official race and racing in this, whilst yes, you're racing the same cars, it's kind of around the same tracks, it's a different ball game. It's a different kettle of fish. When you're trying to take it to these kind of drivers, it's wildly different. And yeah, it's kind of one of those things that we know Casey's going to be rapid with. Just a couple of mistakes and a costly one, although I think at least with that one he could sit there and be like, I wasn't the only one who made that mistake, as Alejandro Sanchez finally comes into the lane and jumps out of the car after 2 hours basically behind the wheel.
And so we've got the machine up into the top 5. It's now Luke McEwen's turn to close things out. It will be Iglesias in, and then Gabby Montoro to replace him as we check back in with the GTPs, where that gap at the front's now grown, of course, with the exit car losing out on its second spot. Gorla second now as a result. Lorenzo directly behind. And the BMW M Team Redline car now has a 12-second buffer to play with only a couple of minutes before the final pit stop window of the race will open. Still BMW M Team BS competition in 4th. The Apex Racing Team number 99 is in 5th position, as the Redline GTD car is going to retake the lead in class. It'll be quite interesting to see where McEwen's 101 spits out, Greg, because he was relatively close to the 190 Mercedes Urano car before the pit stop window opened.
Yeah, and it's it was going to be really fascinating to see that because of the pace that we've seen. And we saw Luke take over from Sanchez in the opening round and put in an absolutely superb run as well. So it's going to be really, really cool to see just what they're going to be able to do here. And this is a great onboard look, isn't it?
It's a great onboard as we ride with Daniel Lorenzo. Just to keep you informed that Luke McEwen came out a full 5 seconds in front of Alexei Nesov. So remarkable job through the pit stop strategy as that car has gone from down in 14th in qualifying to a podium spot. Remarkable charge. But Lewis, this is the care that you have to see trying to get onto the power that we see on board with Urano Esports Data Crop.
Certainly so. Well, as we can see them working their way through the traffic again, the whole classic of if you want to take part in stuff like this, or at least the official service. If you've never been on to iRacing before, new sign-ups get 50% off. If you want your 1 or 2 year renewal, that's 25% off until the 30th of November. And as Arjuna has so delightfully pointed out so many times, maybe you could see yourself on the grid in 2024, or maybe even maybe you could punt Arjuna off the circuit. He does his fair share of racing. So that's what I would do. That's generally my big pastime on the service, is greeting people that I know and then sending them off. No, that's not true.
Me? Race? It is. What alternate universe do you live in? I think that's probably a question that we've got to try and figure out. Altus Esports, another impressive qualifying performance, but Oscar Mangan jumps back into the car and it's going to be up in towards the exit of the boot section. Watch the Coanda car behind and up the inside of the Urano machine. A bit of contact, but I think they get through relatively safely. I don't think any friends were made there, though, Greg.
Yeah, no. That's awfully close quarters stuff here. And I'm just fascinated that Lewis just freely admitted he's a punter. Interesting.
Only people that I know, so that's fine.
See, the thing is, in the UK, punter has a different expression, Lewis.
Does it? Oh, it does actually. No, I was
Are you a punter?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just a regular punter, mate. Just a regular punter. But no, we'll focus back on the race. Otherwise, we'll just get into a completely different topic that will drag us right down a horrible avenue.
It's 8th and 9th in the class. It's the Oscar Mangan-driven Altus Cadillac, the Porsche for Michael Romanidis, sharing that car with Julian Sonnen after Charlie Collins was had an allergic reaction earlier this morning and taken ill. Is watching on maybe from his room in the hospital. Be cheering on his teammate. And again, the problem with the last-minute switches, Greg, this car wasn't allowed to participate in qualifying. It's stayed out of trouble. It's up 12 positions so far today.
Yeah, they've done an incredible job. And I mean, Michael Romanidis has really uncorked a great double stint here and doing a superb job, consistently running really quick laps. And he gets close to somebody, and he just seems to find another gear, closes them up, and gets through on him. Conversely, that number 43 Altus Esports car, now in the hands of Mangan, from where they started, they've just kind of dropped off just a little bit, and I was a bit surprised to see it. They had a couple of penalties, as we've alluded to, and that's definitely hurt them here, and it's a shame. But I'll tell you, Romanidis doing a superb job, isn't he?
Certainly so. Again, we've talked about a little bit about some of the dramas and such through this race, and I do want to touch a little bit back on the Michelin keys to the race, because I mean, look, at least if you look at point 1 and point 2, we can revisit that quite a bit. Obviously, the whole idea of not missing the bus stop. We've seen a few people miss it. We've seen a few people completely clout the barrier. I think we're up to 6 or so now that have very much done so. Pit lane entry, though, I've got to say, Arjuna, it's been less of a problem than I would have expected, and I think that's actually that fills me with joy, because I was expecting the pit lane entry to have caused a lot of people speeding on pit lane and a lot of people causing some incidents coming through that final corner.
I think it's helped that maybe the way that the classes have somewhat overlapped has been beneficial to those coming into pit lane. The guidance from race control was you have to have all 4 tires on the inside of that yellow line heading into the final corner. You could be a little bit more lax through the corner itself on worn tires, but just make sure that you're clearly indicating which direction you were going to go in. But yeah, no, haven't seen any pit speeding penalties, even though there were a few deep sands like Simufy and Iglesias slightly earlier. I remember just watching him and going, how is that not a speeding penalty? But those Michelin keys to the race definitely playing out. The 101, let's go back to the GTDs, because it's only 3.5 seconds, yes I know, but Luke McEwen's on a charge, and this is, Greg, something I talk about maybe way too much. Altus Esports have just had a world champion get out of that car. How many drivers are as quick as a world champion? There's not many. And so now Dino Lombardi has the pressure of having to try and drive as fast as Jordan Caruso while being chased down by the winner from a week ago.
Well, exactly, and I've been watching those times, and the lead two cars in the class, Steinbratton and Lombardi, running low to mid 145s. Luke McEwen, he's been running consistently high to mid-high 144s. He is really, with this clear track right now, is coming after them. He is closing this margin down. And Dino Lombardi, as you said, not only big shoes to fill behind the wheel, but a lot of pressure that he's going to have to be thinking about here because McEwen is making up time, and we've still got over 40 minutes left in this race.
Yeah, 40 minutes also means that A, if you haven't done your driver change already, you're in trouble. You're going to get dinged for your drive time. But B, Lewis, both classes can make it to the end from here. GTD has already finished their pit cycle. GTP's not far away from diving into it.
No, exactly. We are approaching that last pit stop of the day.
And so let's grab a look at the replays from the opening hours of the race. And tidier start for the GTPs, all things considered, but down out of the 90 as we build up with the hybrid spool. 100 feet of elevation change was no challenge for the GTP cars as they made their way safely up through the opening corner. No such luck for some of your GTD contenders further up. The virtual coach and Pure Sims entries were to come together. The resulting chain reaction took out Door and Team 75, and well, Urano and the Grid and Go machines got mixed up as well there. The main talking point, though, has been this. Look at the GTPs flying over the bus stop chicane. There's been plenty of dramas with the curbing there, and dramas over the top of the S's as well. That was the private label team hype. Phil Kraus and Adam Blocker not getting far into the race before they found out just how treacherous traffic could be. The black and gold of the Hydra Race Geodesic Racing team also found themselves in strife. The Ferrari for Drago Racing had nowhere to go, as could be said for the Ferrari of Redline's 171. Arnage competition on the charge on forward, driving straight through the back of the Ferrari and Josh Thompson into the wall. It was an impressive opening stint from Zach Campbell, but Ian Chenguven got into the number 92, and well, cold tires instantly claimed that Porsche victim, and then, well, the graveyard started to get busier and busier. Wave Italy, Grid and Go's Lamborghini, and so many others getting caught out there. Up the inside, Mercedes, Apex racing teams, their chargeback continued. They worked their way up to the podium spots eventually. And there was some of the other big moments that we saw. And of course, for Casey Kerwin, heartbreak for him after inheriting the XZ Cadillac in second spot. No podium finish for them in the second round of the 2023 IMSA Esports Global Championship. There's another great shot, Greg, of just the amount of elevation that sometimes these drivers take over the curves.
Yeah, when you obviously the more aggressive you attack it, the more you're going to unsettle and unload the car. And for the as I said, the prototypes are counting on that downforce because you flow into that turn. You're still going awfully quick, and you're well into the aero to get it to drive it back down. But it is a little bit of a crapshoot, a dice roll every once in a while when that starts to happen. So you've got to play your cards very carefully through there. And as we heard Casey say, you know, sometimes if you miss it that little bit, as Lewis has been talking about, you end up missing the exit. And if you do that, you've missed the bus.
Missed the bus indeed. Those Michelin keys to victory, keys to the race. Lewis, I hope you've got some good ones queued up for Sebring and Daytona, because the puns, they write themselves.
I'm not going into your whole world of puns, mate. We're not going there. Otherwise, well, to be fair, no, it's fine. No, we're just not touching it. We're going to have plenty of keys to that race because it's going to be so tricky to have dealt with. As you can see, the live points on the right, Arjuna. Look how tight it is in GTP, just in the top category.
It is quite close, and ultimately it's a short championship, and even the fact that the BMW M Team Redline run at the front have been consistent in qualifying, where points are awarded. Consistency from Urano and building back on forward has seen them close it up to just 10 points between the two. And then, well, it's a bigger gap to the rest of the field, Greg.
It is, but looking back at that graphic as we now are showing you what's unfolding, live points in the GTD category, and again, only 35 points from first to second. But think about it, if the 101 who won the first race had qualified better instead of back in what I think you said 14th, and if the 90 car qualified better than 9th, with the points awarded, they might, well, especially for the 90 car, they might be in the lead in the points right now. Qualifying is huge.
Yes, they are. Now, I'm not sure if those points are factoring in the 35 points that they got in qualifying as well, so you can add that to the total. Just brings the margin even larger to the Apex Racing team when things played out. And that's why qualifying is so important, Greg, and we saw it play its part in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship this year, where all 4 of the manufacturers, like 7 different teams, had a chance of winning the title going into the final race of the season.
Absolutely. And, you know, when IMSA decided to sort of, you know, just multiply everything by 10, you know, there were always those that are the naysayers that don't want to see the change. But it opened things up a lot because then they, you know, that gave you so many more points for qualifying. In qualifying, that's raw pace, you know, and I love that aspect of it. And I've always thought that should be rewarded. If you qualify well, you ought to get something for that. And it certainly has motivated the guys that might have in the past sandbagged a little bit to have to lay it down in quali. And guess what? That doesn't hurt trying to even out the BOP either, because you get all that data.
On board with the Apex Racing team, it's the rock and rolling, the grooving Frenchman, Maxime Briant, that's trying to get on past Nathan Lewis, New York's own, in that BMW M Team BS competition car. Again, 10 seconds to be added post-race for that number 89. And we still have some expectations that Nathan Lewis may jump out and give the reins back over to Nicholas Boy. But our pit stop window is open. CrowdStrike bring the 4 Lewis down to the lane.
Yeah, of course, like I said, last pit stops before we went to those highlights. It's the last pit stops for everyone on the horizon. Whilst we know that a lot of the GTDs basically have kind of made them, they're already done, they're already set and ready to go. For the GTPs, this is about the last cut-off. You know, sure, some teams will go a bit longer and will be taking it a little bit further into the rest. It's absolutely fine. Others will be awaiting their final stop. Obviously, the tanks go around about 45 minutes. So for BMW Team Redline, though, I will say, for both the Team Redline cars, in their categories, at least in GTP, it has gone very quickly from, yeah, we're kind of in control of this, to, yeah, we're really in control of this. And now the gap is to, we're even more in control of this than they are in the GTD category, which is just absolutely wild how quickly that one switched around.
It's grown 5 seconds or so since Casey Curran has had his issue and the exit car dropped from 5 seconds back. It was about 10 seconds to CrowdStrike and Urano, but now that gap, like Lewis mentioned, is up to 16 seconds and control here. Again, the BMW got an extra 5 kilograms of ballast added to it just a couple of days ago in response to some of the data provided from the teams, and that's something just to keep in mind. Even the weight being added hasn't slowed these teams down in understanding what they need to do. And Silly Lolly, as his teammates call him, Greg, brings the 71 into the lane for what should be the final time today.
Yeah, it should be. And for these guys, you know, there's a fair amount of race time yet to go. I've been watching it. I think that the number 4 had done a nice little fuel save because they didn't stay in the pits all that long. And what I would be doing here is we watch the number 90 of David Lorenzo coming in as well. And these are the 2 guys currently running first, second on the track. And again, always factor in that penalty. But I would be putting tires on that are slightly under pressure because of the heat, and you got a good fuel load on. You want those tires to come in when you've got lighter fuel for the end of this stint and have some tire life left. We'll see if that plays out.
And again, these drivers that can go that little bit longer in this penultimate pit stop, or rather final sequence of pit stops, will just have a slightly shorter time down the lane, you would think, although the problem is it's not going to be limited by the amount of fuel you're putting into the car. You can put fuel and tires in at the very same time, and track temperatures almost dictate that Michelin tire is going to go onto all 4 corners of the car for every single driver that makes their way down on towards the pit lane. These drivers, of course, just 3 tenths between the 2 of them. Just a couple of car lengths have been splitting them. It's Race Clutch that are in a quite interesting position, Lewis, because they're only 5 seconds further back, but about 10 laps shorter into the run. So that's a good chunk of the pit stop that's going to be cut away when we see the French 15 machine down to the lane.
Yeah, like I say, they're running things slightly differently as we see the Apex Racing team cars coming down into pit lane. They're having a much better run. Let's go with that. Is the 99 they were a week ago at Red Atlanta. A couple of issues for Pete Berryman and such going through traffic, and it was a pretty dismal round for the Apex Racing team squad, at least in the GTP category. GTDs obviously they won, but you know, this is looking like a much better run. It's kind of one of those ones that we're only going to really know exactly where things stand once those final pit stops have been completed by everyone. Of course, we know that Race Clutch and Alt is going a little bit longer, so we'll wait for those to come into the pit lane. BMW Team BS competition slightly off kilter, and they have that 10-second post-race time penalty that we've brought up a few times. Big shame for them. They've looked really fast this round. Of course, mostly courtesy of that pole position, Arjuna. They've looked like, you know, incredibly fast, and it's not quite worked out for them.
Hey, Lewis. I'm sorry, Arjuna. Lewis, before we got on the air, said, go ahead and ask any questions. So I'm hoping you don't throw me under the bus here. But here's the question for you. Can you do just left sides or right sides in a pit stop in iRacing, or is it just front, rears, or all four?
So I was hoping Arjuna was going to answer that one. I actually don't, in GTDs, I think you can change front and rears. I don't think you can change left and right. You can change front and rears. I don't know what it is in GTPs. I'm just one full set.
I think it depends. It varies, Greg, from car to car, as that number 89 is going to come into the lane. I'm pretty sure that these GTPs and the GTDs allow you to configure...
Oh, any tire.
Yeah, I think you can pick any tire, so you could have just one corner, because, Lewis, I go back to the BMW Sim Cup finale all those years ago, where Kawanda put the right side rather than the left side, and they recognized that the time of the pit crew having to walk around actually factored into what they needed to think about.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Would these guys maybe just put lefts on, because it's mostly right side corners here where you're in them for a long time, throw lefts on, shorten your pit stop, eat away at some of that 10-second penalty that they're going to have to deal with.
As we see the Altus car in the pit lane, another incident from race control has resulted in a penalty. It's the 46 car of the Orion race team that are going to find themselves with a drive-through as a result of that. Alexander Theba in the 192 Mercedes AMG Urano car that started down in 21st is being hunted down by the Sicilian stallion, Simona Maria Marceno, in the Altus 144. One of the cars that didn't get to qualify after a late substitute replacement driver. But this is the story for many of these teams. Just stay out of trouble, accrue some points, and I hope that at Daytona, Sebring, there's some better luck. And it's a bit of a break as well, Lewis. Sebring is December the 3rd, Daytona is December the 16th. So there's some gaps now after a back-to-back opener to the season.
Exactly. Well, we have that back-to-back round. It's kind of it's quite a large break. It's kind of how we saw it almost with the BMW IMSA Cup, isn't it? Where it kind of like starts a little bit and then there's quite a large break, although nothing near to what we have in that. What is it, 3-4 weeks before we come back racing? Just gives the teams and such, you know, opening the season with a couple of solid rounds, and then just plenty of time to breathe before we get into the final 2 rounds and start talking proper championship games. Yes, by the way, Greg, that was not a stupid question, clearly, because the 2 other idiots didn't really know the answer. But you can change, obviously you can change at least GTD, you can change any individual tyre, I do now remember. But they do fuel and tyre at the same time. So you have to make sure, big boo on that one, thank you. So you have to make sure that the fuel you're putting in is going to be enough to account for like the tyre stop, right? So the fuel's the limiting factor in the stop, not the tyres. And Arjuna, we've seen their teams make many mistakes with that one, and they're waiting for the tyres.
I wonder who you're referring to in certain BMW M-Sim Cup races at Road America, where the Apex Racing team, sorry, naming no names, ran out of fuel on the final lap of the race. You commented last week, Greg, on some of the gamer faces that we saw with Bryn Collins, the tongue sticking out, the various leans from the head. Look at Simone. Look how into the racing he's getting right now.
Yeah, that he is almost biting his lip there. With that focus, and you can see the head tilt really looking into and through the corners. Look at that lean. That is feeling the race right there, and getting after it here. I got to tell you guys, I wish I had a little bit more of your background with these guys, because the Sicilian Stallion, and was it the Rock and Roll Frenchman? I wish I knew where that came from, because it sounds like a great story.
The rock and rolling Frenchman is actually quite easy. If you ever watch Maxime drive, if we cut to his camera as an example, he basically does this thing where his head just goes back and forth the entire time, like he's at a concert. But we've asked him, and he tells us that he's not actually listening to music. But I don't know if I believe that.
Well, I've always said that, you know, each of these cars in the engine note is an instrument in the glorious orchestra and symphony that motorsports is. Maybe that's what he's hearing.
There are some great YouTube videos where people program Formula One engines to I say sing, to sound like various songs. I highly recommend that you go and check out
sequences and everything. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Highly recommend you go check some of that out. GTPs, by the way, still waiting for Race Clutch to come into the lane, but in terms of gaps, it's still 12.5 seconds between the BMW M Team Redline car that you see coming out of the inner loop right now, back to CrowdStrike Racing's number 4 and then Urano's number 90. Those gaps, Lewis, do seem like they're pretty set. I say set in stone, by which I mean they just haven't changed very much in the last 10 minutes or so.
No, things have definitely calmed down on that side of things. That is generally how these races kind of go. It's how Road Atlanta actually really went. It was just the thrilling installment for that final sequence where we saw the Apex Racing team, the Mercedes Apex Racing team, under pressure from Team Redline towards the end of the GTD category as Race Clutch finally make their way into pit lane. And so BMW M Team Redline will return to the front of the category. And for them, realistically, it's all about no risks. Risks through traffic is what's going to cost them victory here at the moment, and they are well aware of that. So I don't think there'll be any major runs.
There we go.
The Team Redline.
He looks so confident and smug as well, but like in a good way. Like he just is at one with the car, and there's the head going back and forth. And what a contrast, Greg, to Nicholas Boy on the other side, who did get back into the car as expected, by the way, to run this machine to the end. That is about as esports sim racery as you can get. The lack of emotion and all of that comes with it.
Well, this is fabulous. Watching Briand right there, he's talking to himself. I think I just saw him swear because I think he made a little mistake and everything, getting frustrated. There's that head bob you're talking about. And Boy is just sitting there, just sheer focus, not moving at all. And this is what a wonderful contrast. And I'll tell you, Boy looks almost professorial, doesn't he?
With the glasses as well, yeah.
Yeah.
As they roll their way in through the chicane, just as note as well, we talked about the fact that Race Clutch was coming down into pit lane. They've, of course, come out just in front of these drivers, and so with the tires not necessarily up to temperature just yet, down in towards the boot section they will go. And it is still the Race Clutch car piloted by Balázs Remények that's trying to build itself, and you can see the wiggle there. Lewis off the corner, still trying to get up to speed.
Yeah, like we say, the sun's out, the track temperature's up. It's looking pretty slippy out there. And like you say, when you're fresh out of pit lane, once you're trying to get that heat cycle into the tyres, it can be a little bit of a trouble spot for these cars. Kind of seen that a little bit earlier on, especially with the runs through the chicane, running out wide. It's not too bad, though. Whoa! That was quite scary. Almost clouting the rear end of the Altus Lambo as they head their way off of the boot and back onto the cup layout, essentially. Say, mistakes in traffic is so easy to make, isn't it, Arjuna, when you're in a battle, a three-way battle nonetheless, to trip up over another car.
And especially because the delta between the classes is quite significant. Greg, last year we had the GT4s and the touring cars. It's not, GT3s and the touring cars. It's not to say that touring cars are slow, but it's the way they actually develop the speed. People think they're front-wheel drive cars, but the way you brake and the way you roll the momentum through the corner, it's actually maybe not as slow as a GTD in some ways, as the Race Clutch car gets a great run up through the top of the S's, and Remények's going to be alongside, going to back out of it though and be a little bit smarter there. But you look at these GTP cars, the way they just rocket through a corner, there's no way a GTD car can match the level of performance that the downforce gives them.
No, and I mean, a GT3 car compared to a GT4 or whatever has a lot more downforce, but they're still very mechanical grip driven, and these prototypes are designed around massive downforce, not just lots of downforce, massive downforce. And you get into really tight, slow corners, sometimes the GT3 car will actually have better apex roll speed because of the mechanical grip. But you're right, those TCR cars are designed with a lot of aero built into them, so they get through corners really, really well. This is a whole different thing. I mean, what are we seeing? It's 10, 11, 12 seconds difference in lap times. That's astounding, as is the pace that Luke McEwen is showing right now. He's close to within what he is coming up on Dino Lombardi right now. What a great run he's put in again.
you have the margin to the race leader holding actually quite steady. So it's Luke McEwen fast, yes, but I hate to say this, I always feel uncomfortable, Lewis, throwing a driver under the bus like this. It's Dino Lombardi being a little bit slow in that Altus 143.
You've got to remember that car's, in that sense, if you can compare where they maybe should be then, has kind of been dragged a little bit out of position, mostly courtesy of Jordan Caruso putting in an absolutely insane stint. That's what's dragged them into this spot. Does mean that he's got all the weight in the shoulders. I'm pretty sure they knew this was going to happen to the Altus Esports team, so I think this isn't really a shock to them. The big thing for Dino Lombardi right now is it's more about keeping the car on the road, not making a mistake. If you lose second position to the Apex Racing team, that's fine. That is fine. Try and stay on the podium, try and keep the car on the road and make sure that the car comes home. That is the most important thing right now for Lombardi to do. And he's got a pretty tall order. Imagine what the nerves are like when you're jumping into a car in this kind of position.
Oh, I would not like to be that driver. We have an easy job just jumping in and talking. It's a lot more difficult when you actually have to focus on delivering a result, not just for yourself, your teammate, but those behind you, the sponsors, the team themselves that make all of this possible. Let's move up the inside by the Urano Esports Data Group car as we watch on board from McEwen on the bottom of your screen. The top of the screen is, of course, the fight between the BMW M-Team BS competition trying to chase down Race Clutch and the Apex Racing team in the fight for 4th position. Gap to the BMW M-Team red line at the front of the field just continues to hold quite steady. And I wonder, Greg, if Team Redline are going to let Max Verstappen leave after this, or if they're going to make sure that come December 3rd and December 16th, that Max is here as their good luck token as the top and bottom screens overlap and the traffic continues to carve on through.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, both of the categories led by Team Redline. Absolutely. I would think, especially up front for that M-Team Redline entry, they want Max there. Obviously, you got somebody that is now a 3-time world champion sort of looking over your shoulder, kind of compels you to do your best, doesn't it?
I think it does in some ways. And the other thing is Max is the kind of guy, I've told the story I think a few times before, but no, he doesn't have a sim rig on his plane. That is #fake news. But what he is very capable of doing, Lewis, you best believe this, is he'll jump onto his laptop, plug a controller in, and be faster on iRacing than anyone else as Maxime Briant gets forced out and Race Clutch take 4th away. I wonder what Race Control will think about that one, though.
Well, yeah, we probably need to see that one definitely on replay. It was a bit messy, a bit naughty, and well, they both ended up about 3.5 kilometers away from the apex in that corner. It's not ideal between the pair of them. What it's doing is kind of opening the door and allowing BMW M-Team BS competition to close back in. The 89 at the moment. Nicholas Boyd behind the wheel once more. Our pole sitter in this race, of course, closing back in. Yes, we know there's still the 10-second time penalty over the head of that BS competition car, but still they're going to try and close back in and maybe make their way past. And hey, if they keep racing like this, maybe that 10-second gap will grow once again.
I think the thing is, BS competition, I think right now are probably not dropping lower than 6, so I think they'll be happy with that. So it's a jink to the inside from Remini, and that's a bit of a reactionary block there from Maxime Briant, isn't it?
Yeah, that was naughty from Briant. Naughty from Briant.
And here comes the charge from Luke McEwen in that Apex Racing team, Mercedes 101, the car that grabbed the victory at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. Not close enough for a look in through the inner loop, but the pressure's building. The rear view mirror of that Porsche, Greg, filled with the sights of the gray, blue, and white.
And they know, obviously, winning round 1, that this car is fast, that Luke is absolutely relentless here. And, a little wide on the entry there for Dino Lombardi, but he did a nice job to get out of it well. But look at the banking as you come in here. You can chuck it in a little bit deeper than you might think. And Luke closing up big time, gets great roll speed and comes up to the inside. He's got some overlap, guys.
I've got to say, those two camera shots, somewhat similar, all things considered, but as the move is done and dusted, the Altus GTP backs out of it and recognizes he doesn't want to get too involved in all of this. And McEwen officially has brought that Apex Racing team car, Lewis, from 14th on the grid to 2nd now with almost 18 minutes still left to go.
Well, at least we now know what Luke McEwen will look like in about 10-20 years' time, because that camera angle was very suspect. The lighting was far too close, so an older in a few times it'll look like Dino Lombardi apparently. No, really solid move there from McEwen, and once again the Apex Racing Team car. Well, it might not be a victory for them this afternoon, but to at least have worked their way back onto the podium from 14th on the grid, no less. You know, the struggles in qualifying from Alejandro Sanchez this time, not being able to take a 4th consecutive pole position, to have to start that process once more. Still, it's a positive sequence for them. It's from their lowest qualifying into yet another podium finish. They cannot not finish on the podium, Greg.
And it's a championship, so you know that is going to be massive in terms of the points here to dig out of that 14th place qualifying hole and earn 2nd place points. That's mega.
Short season, 4 races. Some sim racing championships have the concept of a drop round, by which you have 4 races in this season. You could take one of those and exclude them. Lewis doesn't like the sound of that. I don't like the sound of it either, because it forces you to stay out of trouble. And that's where, going back to Altus as an example, Lewis, they're not maybe focused right now on the championship themselves in that GTD 143, but instead, 3rd on the track, they're thinking, you know what? Maybe I crack the top 10, maybe I crack the top 5. Let's see where we roll from here.
It's not even the main reason why I don't like drop scores. I think.
Oh, just because you don't like doing the math.
It makes what is already a tough calculation into one that's next level difficult. Every time I start thinking about it, I was talking to Henry Morbo, who's in contention for a championship where there's 2 drop scores over an 8-round season, and I was like, I just don't know how to calculate it. Like, how do I work out? Like, I've got to now work out what you're missing and what you aren't, and then this, and then I carry the 7. I'm like, this is impossible. I like a championship like this. It's dead simple. You do qualifying, you get points. You do a race, you get points, and at the end of the season, you calculate all 8 of those together, and bish bash bosh, we have our champion. No problem.
Well, here's the deal with that, and I completely agree with you. You know, if you have an 8-10 round championship, all right, I'll give you, I understand commitments and the like, a couple of drops, but the simple solution to that, if you are going to have a drop in a championship, you can drop everything except the last round.
Exactly.
Last round's mandatory, and then you come in and you race that last round and determine the championships. And you know, I've been involved with a couple of series that have adopted that, and you're right, Lewis. It saves massive gnashing of teeth and pulling of hair by the announcers to make it compelling for a championship call in that last round.
So the solution is, like I've commentated on some series where the only round that can't be dropped is the final one, so you have at least a picture of what to calculate from in that final round. 15 minutes to go. The margin at the front's coming down, you know. It's 9 seconds between BMW M Team Redline and the CrowdStrike Racing number 4. Silly Lolly continues to ride, but is this maybe, Lewis, what you were saying earlier? No danger, no foot being put beyond the bounds of the track. This is just the Redline contingent recognizing that 15 minutes away from a potential victory.
Exactly that. Look, we know that that he may be silly, Lully, but he's a smart boy. He knows what he's doing. He's got a big brain on his shoulders, and he'll just, he's won enough races. He'll be playing things, 1 lap at a time. I'm sure it is not a pace issue for Lulham right now. It's just about ticking off laps. Always the whole thing of our junior. It doesn't matter if you win by a second, a minute, or whatever. Win by the smallest possible margin. That's what Alan Frost always used to basically say. If you don't need to put the effort in, don't put the effort in. If you don't need to take the risk going through traffic, don't take it. I think CrowdStrike are taking the risk because they kind of need to.
I think they want to take those risks as well, potentially, as we cycle back over to that GTD driver of Ollie Steinbraten, who's now 16.7 seconds clear of the 101 Mercedes Apex Racing Team car. We have a concept of driver of the day. How could you differentiate, Greg, Gianni Vecchio and Ollie Steinbraten, given they haven't really had to fight wheel to wheel, and all they've done is run away at the front and not put a foot wrong?
Yeah, I mean, it's been absolutely perfect execution. Both of them doing exactly what they needed to do. As you mentioned, Vecchio doing a superb job, just keeping the car right in the front hunt, and then Ollie getting in and opening that margin up. It's difficult to differentiate that at this stage. I give you that for sure. The one thing too, talking about when you've got these 10-second plus margins late in a race, when you're dealing with multi-class racing, that chess game I talk about in the traffic, having that margin allows you to be a little bit more conservative in traffic. You don't have to take big risk. And yes, you can give up that half second or even a second a lap on occasion and you're still going to be okay. It doesn't equate to loss of focus. It just equates to a little bit more patience. And that's really, really nice to have that arrow in your quiver. Ooh, what a move around the outside there. There's a little commitment for you in the hands of, is that Oscar Mangan?
It was the Irishman who's trying to chase down Julian Sohn and picks up some grass down the bottom of the entry to the boot as well. And you're so right. And that's where the lack of safety cars potentially also plays a part there, because there's no interruptions to pack them back up, and as a result, drivers are going to, for the most part, be just pushing as much as possible. Here's a look at the BMW M Team Redline, as well as the Team Redline contingent. Of course, the BMW M Hybrid V8 runs its way through the S's in control of Chris Lullum, and we can confirm that's not Josh Thompson in the 171, but Ollie Steinbraten at home. And we confirm that, not at the Red Bull Racing facility, but with lots of Red Bull behind him, Lewis.
Not the only thing that's behind him. What else can you spot?
The Christmas tree's up a little bit early.
It's the 12th of November, son. What's that up for? A Christmas tree? Get that ripped down immediately. Unacceptable from Ollie Steinbraten. I was about to say, yeah, maybe he is driving the race. Absolutely not. After that, I mean,
there's some Christmas spirit for you.
December the 1st, we can start talking about it. I will say, by the way, to go back to the driver of the race kind of conversation, because I don't think it's Redline of any description. No, they've played their cards really, really well.
Sanchez?
Yeah, it is Alejandro Sanchez, as we'll see Altus maybe looking down the inside of the BMW contingent from the Apex Racing team. Alejandro Sanchez opening stint of the race, 14th, up to second, well, up to third. Very, very impressive. If you really want to make Casey Kerwin feel bad, you can say Owen Carroll's opening stint of the race actually pretty good, but that's probably a bit harsh.
I'm with you on Sanchez. I'm with you on Sanchez, Lewis, all the way.
And I guess maybe the debrief in the Apex Racing team, Greg, is going to be, so why were we so bad in qualifying? And was it maybe part of the not understanding the Mercedes potentially? Because let's be honest, Mercedes didn't qualify necessarily that well. And as this fight is going on, the other of the Altus cars, the 143, I think is going to be passed indeed into turn number 1 by the Mercedes AMG Urano car. Those Mercedes just looking so much stronger on the longer run. You talked a bit about the platforms of the various GT3 cars. Yeah, maybe just playing out better in the race than in the qualifying session itself.
Well, that's it. I mean, I think qualifying, you're limited to 4 laps, right? And so you can dial a car up to be really fast for 4 laps, but you may then sacrifice your speed near the end of a stint when the tires go off a little bit. And if you get a car running super stiff, obviously that induces a little bit of scrub in the tires. You get it'll change direction well, but it will oftentimes eat up a little tire. The Mercedes just have that little bit of compliance that's just sort of designed into the chassis, and they're great on curbs. And look at the curves you deal with here, bus stop in particular, but we've talked about it, the exit of 10, the exit of the 90, down into turn 1. And over a long stint, I think the Mercedes just has better stint speed than some of the other cars here. Save, of course, what they're doing with the Ferrari, because they've just been brilliant up front. But a lot of that they just had great time on clear track and just dropped the hammer and were able to open those margin up, and that gave them that little bit of safety margin in traffic.
9 minutes left to go. We're not being treated to a fight and a push for the lead like we were at Road Atlanta. Indeed, Team Redline have very much for the time being left this without too much of a shadow of a doubt. And it's a good time just to remind you that if you want to jump on to learn more about iRacing, how you can start your iRacing career, new memberships 50% off, renewals are 25% off as well. Make sure you jump on that, iRacing.com/Black Friday. iRacing.com in general to learn a little bit more. And if you want to learn about IMSA Esports in particular, iRacing.com/IMSA-Esports, a one-stop shop to learn more about the drivers, the rules, the points themselves, and the various results that we have. It'll be a couple of weeks away before we head over to Sebring International Raceway, where, Lewis, it's all going to be about respecting the bumps. Plural there, not singular.
Yeah, exactly. Now, to be fair, Sebring, I kind of marked it out as the race to look at for me. It's the one I'm most excited about. Obviously, everyone talking about Road Atlanta at the start of the season was really cool. Here's just great because the speed, going to Daytona and talking about the high banks, talking about the championship and all of this, that, and the other. But for me, Sebring's where it's at. I mean, there is something about that place. It is wild. It's so much fun. It is so different. And you kind of think, if you look at it like as a circuit where the undulation, the up and down. Well, there's none of it. There's lots of little bits of it, but not as a major talking point over the circuit. But there's so much character in all of that, and that's why you and O'Leary, we shouldn't repave it.
Don't. I knew you were going there. The greatest thing about this track, in my opinion, I've never had the chance to stay there, but Greg, I've been reliably informed there's a hotel directly overlooking the run in towards the hairpin.
There is. There is. Yeah, when Don Panos got the leasing rights for the facility, he built that hotel there. It was sort of the Chateau Elan South, for lack of a better phrase. It's great viewing, and obviously it tends to book up awfully fast, but it's fabulous. And the other point is Johnny O'Connell, who's the winningest driver ever at Sebring. I think he's got 9 wins there in the 12 hours. Talking with him, talking with other drivers over the years about the bumps, they will tell you, oh, they're vicious. They pound you. You get out of the car, you're beaten and you're bruised, and then you go, so they need to repave this place. And it's a resounding, don't touch it, because it's got character. And keep in mind, some of those parts of that track are the exact same as they were when that place came into existence, and it's the place that brought international sports car racing and even Formula One to the United States. So it's iconic. Leave it alone. And Lewis, you were talking about no elevation change after Road Atlanta, obviously, and here, none there. But you go to the suspension engineers, they will tell you if you add up all the bump and rebound over a race at Sebring, it's way more elevation accumulated than any of these other tracks. It's that violent. What a moment there.
The Marla Racing BMW got a surprise as the black and gold Hydro Race Geodesic racing car had a moment through the final corner, but able just to survive that in the nick of time. You hear that, UNO Pavey? We're not repaving Sebring.
UNO Pavey?
Have you not heard that nickname?
No, that's horrendous.
It's better than Cutie Patootie.
That is his nickname. If everyone can also get on that, you and O'Leary, Cutie Patootie, off you go. Of course, the thing is, I jest. Sebring should not be repaved ever. It's a fantastic circuit. The bumps will give it the character. To be fair, I like a circuit that's got a few lumps and bumps to it. It's what makes it exciting. Although some drivers, when they get caught out by one or two, like what we've seen this afternoon, maybe they like them slightly less. Although that's more on curb abuses, isn't it?
And you know what, guys? Let's not forget this is a team sport. And that. Let's watch what happens here. Another replay. Watch. Tails away here. This could be good. Oh, just lost it. Just past the apex. That was a great piece of evasive too.
I think as a result of that, Felix Kronbach actually has had to come down to pit lane, and so that's a disappointing end for the Marla Racing team. Of course, powered by BS Plus competition. It's been a difficult day. We had 46 starters, of course, the 20 full-time GTPs added with the Texaco Racing by TK guest entry, 25 GTDs, last count, 31 still out there and running. That bus stop chicane, that inner loop, has claimed plenty of cars, and what it's also done, I think, is put a little bit of fear into Sasha Gorlin, the CrowdStrike machine, because the gap has grown for the lead. The gap for second, Lewis, has started to come down, and Urano Esports Data Group are in danger of stealing second away in the closing stages.
Classic Urano. Of course it is. That battle for second is incredibly close in the GTP category. As much as we're seeing the red line car driving around at the moment, that's definitely what we want to be seeing on the racetrack right now. Just 4/10 of a second between them. Urano Esports Data Group will most certainly go for it. And how fitting is it that the 101 and the number 19 are two championship leaders in each of the categories? They've qualified poorly and they've still worked their way back up to the relative front. It just shows the quality of the Margina and why they're in contention for the championship. I mean, arguably, pound for pound, this Urano Esports Data Group car, they've won the most races in this car. Arguably, they're the best team in the GTP category at the moment.
Well, definitely in the BMW M Hybrid V8, I think that is probably something that you could claim, stake a claim to. Again, these are valuable points that they are fighting for as well. Second pays out 320 points. Third pays out 300 points. 20 points could see Urano back actually into the championship lead up at the conclusion of this race, and so it would be definitely something to think about. Traffic plays its way out wide and up through the S's. They build once more, Greg.
Yeah, I just love that compression as you start climbing the S's, and you have to thread that needle between these guardrails. And he's close enough now. See if he's going to get any kind of a useful toe. And remember, there's a very clear area there. You have to have overlap, or you're going to be really risky going in. But right now, I think he's hoping that Sasha Gorley is just going to feel the pressure, make maybe a little mistake here. We've got, what, 2 laps to go probably? And he's just trying to see if he can get either trip him up with a mistake or trip him up with traffic. And there is some coming up.
Traffic could be such an important part of this. The lights flashing, remember, aren't actually aren't important. It's just the driver behind saying, I want to get on through, just keep an eye on me. A GTP machine, the Porsche for Obsidian Racing, stays well off to the side, laps down, does not want to be a part of that. How many laps are we going to get to go? Your leader is coming around to the final corner, and I think is going to take the white flag this time by Lewis.
Yeah, we are going on to the last lap of the race. 1 minute 30 seconds left to go. It takes about 1 minute 30 to get round the circuit. So for BMW M Team Redline, this is looking like it's going to be a solid victory for them and their Team Redline counterpart in the GTD category. Not going to be as simple though as to who's going to be in second. There is surely a move coming in for Urano. It's just about how much risk they want to take and where that move's going to come.
And this is where championship, Greg, you mentioned it earlier. Second would be great, yes, but the one thing you don't want to do if you're Urano is lose out on the podium spot.
Absolutely right. And, so you're going to get there. You're going to, if you can get through without any massive risk, you're going to take that opportunity. But if you think, all right, if I stuff it down in here, this could end up in tears, I think you're going to see Urano, and I think you're going to see Daniel Lorenzo is going to just say, I've got this right here, good points, it's a great day. But if a mistake happens from Gorley, he's going to jump, no question.
And it's kind of an opposite perspective happening further back. BS Turner have just gotten past Altus's 143 for 5th position on the closing lap of the race. Not really a defense put up there by Dino Lombardi as that Porsche continues to fall its way backwards through the field. And what has been a pretty dramatic second round of the 2023 IMSA Esports Global Championship. For a while in the opening round, Redline thought they were on their way to victory. Race control intervened and stopped that from being the case, but Lollerman Pinto cannot be denied. It's victory in the second round of the 2023 IMSA Esports Global Championship as BMW M Team Redline stand on top of the GTP class. And Lewis, we now wait for a second and third to come to the line. CrowdStrike in front of Urano, but an even longer wait to crown Team Redline just the second team to win in both classes of an IMSA Esports event.
Yeah, exactly. I've got to say, by the way, I don't know how the CrowdStrike Acura was able there to hang on against Urano. That was a very impressive performance from them. But yes, to counter your point, you were exactly right. As last season, obviously it was the GTDs and the TCR, or the touring cars, rather. And the only time that we saw a double victory was at Daytona at the last round of the season. The 97 for the Apex Racing team in the GTDs, and then the touring cars of the 199. So that's the only time we've seen that in this championship thus far. Redline are going to break the trend and do it again, and in what style as well. They've basically dominated each of the categories.
Incredible style, but Greg, maybe we can explain a little bit as to why the Altus 143 was dropping back in the closing stages. They blew a tire with 3 laps to go and had to nurse that car back home in 6th spot.
Well, and that it is not deserved. I mean, they really had done a nice job. I mean, for a large part of that last hour, we had 3 different manufacturers, Ferrari, Mercedes, Porsche, up in that top 3. It would have been a great podium, and you absolutely hate to see that. And here we go through the final turn. I'll tell you what, these guys, just an absolute, to use an American, a Southern American term, these guys took the competition out to the woodshed and gave them a thrashing.
It's the pump of the fist that I think tells it all. He wanted to try and get the Red Bull up onto the screen as well, but time did not permit that. It's double delight for the BMW M Team Redline for the Redline crew and their Ferrari. What a drive, and I think the championship has maybe taken a bit of a dramatic swing, all things considered. We'll take a look at the IMSA Esports move of the race before we talk you through your race results. And it happened as, well, the 101 tried to charge its way on forward, and Greg, it was Luke McEwen that wasn't going to take no for an answer.
Yeah, he was just relentless chasing Lombardi here, and pushed him really, really hard, got all the way down into the toe of the boot, and watch what he did here. You can see Lombardi squared up the laces a little bit, looked like he got a little bit better run, but right here, watch McEwen just throw it in, closed it up. Lombardi got a little wide, McEwen squared right there, got the power down, got that little bit of overlap, and then with the faster traffic coming up behind, he was able to hang on, get over, juke back in front, make that pass stick, and that completed a run from 14th on the grid to 2nd. Absolutely stunning performance by our round 1 winners.
And so that is your IMSA Esports move of the race. Here's a look at those race results, though. A provisional, yes. Don't think there's much for race control to take a look at, but it is Lolum and Pinto. Assured at the top, 12.3 seconds clear of the Acura for CrowdStrike Racing, who will be thrilled with how things played out for them. Of course, partnered up with Movano Sim Racing. They grabbed 2nd after starting down outside of the top 10. 3rd for Urano after another disappointing qualifying spot, but ultimately it's the points on the board that are really important. Reminit for Race Clutch 4th. Nicholas Boyford, the BS competition team, will drop back to 6th behind the Apex Racing team, Maxime Briant, for jumping the start. Coanda's 91, Altus is 43, Satellite 64, and then Pure Sims in their 16 and make up the rest of the top 10. Just one more car scored on the leading lap. That was Marcus Hamilton in the number 3 second CrowdStrike entry. Samuel Grana for Obsidian 1 lap down. Austin Young 2 laps down for the Hydra Race Geodesic Racing team. Orion, Xset, Wave Italy Racing, Texaco Racing by TK, Coanda's 2nd car, Williams Esports, and so many more in that GTP class find themselves in the wars. Jakub Maciejewski, the final DNF in class. The gaps maybe not representative because Ollie Steinbraten got to do an additional lap beyond what the rest of the field got to do, but ultimately about 15-20 seconds clear of the rest. Redline's Ferrari was never in doubt here today. Luke McEwen charged on forward, grabbed that IMSA Esports move of the race, of course, in the closing stages, with Alexei Nesov in 3rd for the number 190 Mercedes Urano team. Simufy will be delighted with 4th. Reina Talvar recovers the BS Turner machine up into the top 5, and then the rest of the drivers continue to scroll their way on through. Maniti 11th, Arnage 12th after a handful of drive-throughs early doors. Williams is 155, 13th with Delta Sport, and then Team 75 Bernard by SimRC in front of the Mahler Racing Team car, the most recent of the issues at the end of the race. Door, Brabham, Mercedes, AMG, Williams Esports, and then the Grid and Go Virtual Coach Ferrari complete your top 20. The Team Redline 2nd car down in 21st. Matteo Victorino for Impulse in 22nd. Drago, Pure Sims, and the Grid and Go cars making up the rest of the top 25. So look top to bottom at your, again, provisional race results. Race Control had 100 incidents reported over the course of our opening round. Only 31 incidents to look through over the course of the 2nd round, which I think is probably good to hear from their perspective. But let's head down to victory lane and head first to the BMW M Team Redline. Diogo Pinto, Chris Lolum standing by with Lewis McLeod.
Yeah, going to start with Lulham, of course. Mr. Good Sir Silly Lully. Not a fan of that. But got to say, very impressive drive. Got to be said, you got to be feeling an absolute high, especially considering the 170 taking the victory in the GTD category. Talk us through it.
Yeah. I mean, today most of the hard work was done from Diogo's qualifying and, very consistent pace. The tire management was awesome. You were seeing track temperatures of over 50 degrees. So really that was the main feature of the race today, and Diogo and I both did a pretty good job of that, I could say. Yeah, no, it's very good for Redline scoring win in both class, and I'm not sure where we are in the standings, but I guess it's very close for the title with Urano at the moment.
I'm sure it is. We don't have points at the moment, so we can discuss that in a future moment. But Diogo Pinto, you were the one that started the race. I want to talk about those first few runs through traffic, because that must have been absolutely terrifying. Certainly was from our point of view. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, it was always very tight at the start with the first waves of traffic. We knew that we had to be a little bit more conservative this race, because we had 2 drive-throughs in the first one and potentially cost us a win. So, yeah, the pace was very strong. I just had to stay calm with the traffic. I knew BS had a penalty, and our pace, I think, was really good, always a couple tenths ahead of everyone else. So just taking it easy, and then Silly Luli was able to bring it home.
And Chris, that nickname is apparently going to stick. I have no control over it, but it is going to stick. Obviously, one of the main things that we saw through the race was, particularly in the GTP category, was a lot of teams clouting the wall going into the inner loop. Obviously the bus stop. Was that ever a risk for you? Had you sorted some stuff out on the setup? Like, how did you make that car compliant through there, and how did you kind of run the risk without taking it too far?
We had quite a lot of heads. Not headwind, tailwind into the bus stop. So I guess you call it the inner loop, which made it really tricky with the bounce. So we just had to reduce our speed and take it more conservatively. That's it pretty much.
Yeah, and obviously, Chris, you were rolling into that final part of the race with the pressure kind of closing in a little bit on the rear. Was that you just kind of controlling the gap and just controlling the race from that point? Because what was 12 seconds? I think you crossed the line with maybe a bit more. It dropped down to about 8 and a bit in all of that. Was that all part of the plan?
Well, losing time is never part of the plan, but no, I was definitely taking an extra step of caution. With such a margin, we had the strategy under control. And also when it's so hot with 50, 54, 53 degree track, there's no point really risking it going more aggressive in any way. Because any kind of margin you leave at the beginning, you'll get back at the end with the tire life. But no, it was very much of a chilled out drive. I knew once I saw that gap straight away.
Well, lads, an unbelievable win. I'm sure it counts high up there along your list of accolades in sim racing. We'll see you back in Sebring in a few weeks' time. Have a great break, and again, congratulations on a very well-deserved victory.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Superb performance from the pair of those. But Greg is heading down to the GTD because we've got more Team Redline to talk to.
Yeah, what an event it has been for Team Redline. And you guys, you played, first of all, you played the team aspect of it, the dual driver aspect to absolute perfection. And, Gianni, what was your mindset in your opening stints about trying to preserve and protect, so to speak, here, knowing that those prototypes were going to be coming through and knowing how intense the competition was?
You always want to be first when the prototypes are hitting you. I think always being the leader is the best position to be in. So that was the goal right from the start. I wasn't really happy with quali. I left a bit out there, but I know that the car had a lot of pace. We practiced a lot, had a good setup. We're really confident, and I think that's why I went super early for the move for P1. And then traffic management is key. We did that pretty good, and that's what gave us the gap of like 2-3 seconds after the first wave.
Got to ask you too about just a little, setup on the car. Obviously, this track is so smooth, so grippy, so fast, but you've got to attack curbs. Do you have to compromise a little bit so that you can really use the curbs, especially in the bus stop, to maintain speed?
That was a bit tricky because we struggled in Road Atlanta a bit with top end speed, so we went for a little bit, I would say, more top speed here. So obviously that's downforce. But overall, I mean, it's all about how you hit them. I mean, obviously the setup does a bit, but I think it was all about hitting the curbs in the right way. If you do that in practice a lot of times, if you get the confidence, if you get the consistency in the curb riding, I think then the setup is not as important, but still a big part of it. But I think we did that perfectly.
Oh, without a question. And Ollie, when you took over, it seemed to work out because you found yourself, it certainly seemed to me, a fair number of times out there with nobody in front of you and able to just really let it fly and start to really, continue to build that gap. Gianni gave you a car in an absolutely superb position.
Yeah, it was really nice to just take the car in P1, know that as long as you do what you do, it's going to be good. So I was just got into the flow, felt like I was doing really good with the management of tires, with the traffic. And of course, when you're leading, I feel like the traffic is slightly more kind to you. So it was really a pleasure to drive this car.
Yeah, well, with those big leads, you can also take it a little bit more conservative near the end when you're dealing with situations, obviously. We saw you in race 1 at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, the onboard coming out of 7 on that last lap, and how you got so upset. I was joking earlier that I think you and Gianni decided to take that out on the rest of the competition in this one and just thrashed him out there. It has to be really, really satisfying, to be able to do that. And with the 101 coming up, the Mercedes finishing second behind you, this points battle it's only 2 rounds in, but it's stunningly close.
Yeah, it's super close between us, and I know that.
What was that?
Yeah, of course. Like, I know that Alejandro
Yes.
and Makion is super talented, so I think this battle is going to be really, really, really close till the end of the championship. So we just have to keep practicing and making sure we do our best.
Absolutely. Well, you did it just as a team, winning both GTP and GTD, and you guys in just a superb effort out there, taking the field to task and doing a great job. Congratulations. And we were just talking about points, Arjuna. It's going to be really interesting.
It's going to be very, very interesting indeed. Here's a look at how things line up. Not sure if the qualifying points have been factored into this, but again, it's showing it's just the 10 points between the BMW M Team Redline and the Urano Esports Data Group teams as we work our way with now, officially, Lewis, half of the 2023 IMSA Esports Global Championship in the books.
Yeah, we're 2 weeks down, but we've got a long way to go, middle of December, before we wrap up the titles and stuff, so this will change rapidly. Remember that the race result from Road Atlanta did change post-race as well, and so I'm sure things will remain close in both categories. I mean, it's only 15 points over on the GTD side, with Team Redline ahead of the Mercedes AMG Apex Racing team.
I think that's going to be slightly larger, though, just by virtue, again, of the slightly disappointing qualifying. But that's something that, going over to Sebring, Greg, all the teams will keep in mind. Qualifying points are important. You can fight your way back through the field, as the 101 showed us today, but the streak of Apex Racing victories in the GTDs officially has come to a close.
It has, but what a fight they put in after that awful qualifying in 14th coming up. And now, as a result of that drive, and I mean, that's a dig deep drive, able to sort of stem the flow, if you will, only 15 points out of the lead. And you know what? I've just got a gut feeling here that car at Sebring is going to be really strong.
It's going to be interesting heading to the very bumpy Sebring International Raceway, how things play out. And of course, it's a couple of weeks away, December the 3rd, 2 p.m. Eastern, same time and same place. Join us on IMSA TV and on the iRacing Esports Network for round 3. Again, new memberships are 50% off. Renewals are 25% off as well. Head on to iRacing.com/Black Friday. There's never been a better time to join in the fun. And what fun we had here today in upstate New York. Track temperatures were blistering, the action on track blistering as well. But double delight for Team Redline. They stopped the streak of the Apex Racing team in the GTDs, and they become just the second team to win both classes in a single event. For the teams behind the scenes at VCO, iRacing, and IMSA, thank you for joining us for round 2. We'll see you in a couple of weeks' time over at the bumpy Sebring International Raceway to roll on for the 2023 IMSA Esports Global Championship.